Some people call me the luckiest girl in my small town in Colorado. I was the only child to my successful parents, who never wanted me to know what they did for a living. Once, when I was around 6, I snuck into Dad's office.
Dad, what are you doing?
Jessica, are you in my office? Where are you?
Under your table. I want you to tell me about your job.
Dad quickly changed the subject, the same way Mom does. I didn't understand, but I couldn't complain because they bought me everything I wanted and more. And then one day, when I was around 10, my parents came back from a busy day, and I was so excited to see them because the whole week they spoke about a big surprise they had for me.
Jessica, come downstairs. Your surprise is here.
As I ran down, I kept imagining that it was the latest iPad I asked for, since I was obsessed with the latest tech devices. But when I got down, there was this girl who looked almost like me.
Who is this?
This is your sister.
What? I thought babies come from your tummy, and she's too big to be a baby. So how is she my sister?
We adopted her. Jessica, meet Rebecca. And Rebecca, please meet our one and only little princess, Jessica.
Rebecca looked at me, and then she stepped forward and suddenly curtsied.
Lovely to meet you, Jessica.
I didn't know how to react at that moment because my parents never told me they were bringing home a stranger.
Nice to meet you too, Rebecca.
Rebecca took some time to open up to me, so after a week of having her around, I thought I would do something nice. So I threw her a treehouse party. But as soon as she stepped in, she suddenly fell down the treehouse.
Rebecca!
I was shocked out of my mind. I had no idea what had made her suddenly fall like that until I got down and she started screaming.
Get away from me! Mom! Dad!
This girl started freaking out on me. Her arm was injured, and I just wanted to help. Mom and Dad came running to her. Oh my goodness, what happened?
Jessica pushed me down. What? I did not push you.
Rebecca cried louder, and my parents rushed her to the hospital. I was so confused. Why would she blame me for something that I didn't do? At the hospital, no matter how many times I tried to explain to Mom and Dad that I didn't do anything, they still doubted me.
We brought Rebecca to you because we thought you felt lonely in our big house.
And if you didn't like her, you should have just said something instead of just pushing her down. While they were busy lecturing me, Mom received a phone call and signaled at Dad to take me out of the room. They acted so secretive. But I had a bigger problem to worry about than my parents' mysterious life. I had to deal with the little lying Pinocchio, Rebecca. After that incident, I decided to keep my distance from Rebecca and focus on what I loved the most, school. I was the smartest, and all the teachers adored me. But there was one girl who couldn't stand me because she struggled to get high grades. Nancy.
If you stare at your score any longer, you might just magically turn into a 0.
Nancy, just bring back my results and stop being a bitter loser. You will always stay one step behind me. When Nancy waved the paper in front of my face for me to catch it, Rebecca suddenly tripped her and she fell flat on her face. I don't need you to fight my battles. I disliked Rebecca so much after the stunt she pulled, and now she was trying to save me. That's just crazy. And then during recess, while I stood in the line to buy my lunch, Rebecca was right behind me and suddenly speaking to me. I'll tell your parents the truth. You didn't push me. Why did you do that? I did nothing bad to you. When your dad called you their one and only princess, I felt so jealous. Because why did they adopt me when they already have someone they love so much? I'm sorry that you feel that way. But our parents love us both. They were really worried about you after you injured your arm. Rebecca suddenly hugged me and cried on my shoulder. Thank you for calling them our parents. It means a lot. After that, I grew fond of Rebecca, and we became the best sisters ever. Years went by, and then we were in high school. Rebecca and I had a bond that could never be broken. And then one day, I found her crying in the bathroom. Rebecca, what happened? Oh, Jessica! Everything is going to be ruined now! Hey, talk to me. Tell me what's wrong. My real mother is here! She's the new janitor! Rebecca has been in our lives for so long, I even forgot that she was adopted. That's great news! At least now you know who your real mother is. I've always known who my real mother was. She left me at the orphanage when I was 8, and I was lucky that your parents adopted me then. But now she's here and she wants me back. Rebecca told me not to say anything to Mom and Dad, but I couldn't stop thinking about this. I loved Rebecca so much, and I didn't want anyone to take her away. So that night, I waited for her to fall asleep, and then I snuck into Mom and Dad's room. I found Rebecca crying today, but she asked me not to say anything. We are glad you came to us with this, hon.
Yes, and don't worry, no one will be taking your sister away. She is our family now.
After speaking to my parents, I felt so relieved and was able to finally go to bed. And then the next day, when Rebecca and I got home after school, we found Mom and Dad in the living room with Rebecca's real mom. Rebecca suddenly looked at me angry and lashed out. I told you to keep it a secret! I know, but nothing, Jessica! You broke my trust! She ran off to her room, and that was the end of our sister bond. Then the next thing Mom and Dad said made no sense. Rebecca's mom will be living with us for a while. She wants to get to know Rebecca, and we think it's a spectacular idea. No, Mom. She left her when she was just a little girl. Why are you doing this? I was struggling so much back then, and I really didn't want to give her up. Please, she's all that I have. After hearing her story, I felt sorry for Rebecca's mom and accepted Mom and Dad's decision for her to stay for a while. But Rebecca was not happy at all. The next day at school, Rebecca planted a little surprise for me in my locker. Rotten cheese. It made my entire locker smell.
I see you got my little gift.
Rebecca, why are you doing this?
You know why? Because you ratted me out. And rats eat rotten cheese.
I only told Mom and Dad to protect you. Now get this cheese out of my locker. Now! Rebecca suddenly pushed me against the locker and spoke to me so harshly. It's like she turned into a monster overnight.
I'm done being your friend. You spoiled brat!
Rebecca, you are acting out for no reason. After what happened with Rebecca, I wanted to ask my parents to speak to her. But when I got home, she was already there with Nancy. And when I entered, my parents looked upset with me. Jessica, why did you attack Rebecca at school? This is so unlike you. What? She's lying. I would never do something like that.
Her friend says she saw the whole thing.
They're both lying. Rebecca started crying on Nancy's shoulder, and when my parents weren't looking, Rebecca smiled wolfishly at me.
I have a very big reputation at school, and I would never lie. Your daughter Jessica acted like a wild barbarian at school today.
If I'm a barbarian, then you are the devil himself, standing here and lying to—
That's enough. Now go to your room. This is unacceptable. You're grounded for a week.
I couldn't believe my parents didn't believe me. They looked at me like I wasn't their child. And while I was moping about what happened, I heard some voices from outside my bedroom window. When I peeked through my curtain, I saw my parents and Rebecca's mom. I opened my window slightly without them noticing and managed to hear everything they were saying.
The girls will soon turn 18, and we need to plan their next step.
Oh, I can't wait to get my hands on all that money their parents left them.
Yes, I'm tired of playing sweet daddy. I should be on an island, enjoying the sea breeze.
And I don't have to play the stupid role of being the janitor.
I can't believe how smoothly our plan worked. They are now at each other's throats.
It's going to be a piece of cake getting them to sign those papers.
I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My heart raced as I heard footsteps by my door. I quickly shut my eyes tight as the door opened.
Jessica.
I kept my eyes closed, hoping that she would eventually go away.
She's fast asleep.
That's good. We should be careful where we have our meetings now. After they closed the door, I opened my eyes and started panicking. I had to speak to Rebecca. The next morning, I overslept. But when I went downstairs, I had to be strong and pretend like I heard nothing. Good morning, sleepyhead. You're up late today. Yeah, I forgot to set my morning alarm. At least I still have time for breakfast.
Actually, you don't. We're almost late for school.
Okay, I'll just grab an apple. As soon as we entered the school doors, Nancy hung onto Rebecca like glue.
Hey, best friend!
Rebecca, I need to talk to you.
Oh, buzz off, Jessica!
You buzz off, Nancy. She's my sister.
Adopted sister.
Rebecca pushed past me, with Nancy smiling wickedly at me. And when Nancy ran off to go to the bathroom, it was my chance to get Rebecca alone. Rebecca, I have something really important to tell you.
Hey, girls! Are you two back to being best sisters?
No, and stop following me around school. I don't want people to think that I'm the janitor's daughter. When Rebecca walked off, I tried to go after her, but her so-called real mother held me back.
Give her some space. She'll talk to you when she's ready.
Just having her hold my arm gave me the chills. After she went off, I knew what I had to do to get Rebecca to hear me out. When it was time for cheerleading practice, I waited for everyone to leave the room, and once the coast was clear, I opened Rebecca's locker. I still remembered her password, and then I quickly searched for her hairbrush, got strands of her hair, and put everything back. I ran to the school science lab, where I thankfully found my science teacher, Mrs. Broody. Jessica, what can I do for you? I need to test these 2 samples to see if the DNA matches. I gave Mr. Broody a sample of my hair and a sample of Rebecca's hair. Whose hair samples are these? It's mine and Rebecca's. I overheard my parents talk last night, and they said some really shocking things. Okay, please don't tell anyone I did this for you. It's against the school policy. I left the samples with Mrs. Broody, and the next step was finding out who my real parents were. As soon as I got home after school, I searched for my ID document inside my chest drawer. In that moment when I found it, Mom appeared. Jessica, I didn't know you were back from school. Yeah, I just got back, and I'm going to the library. I felt so awkward around everyone in the house because in my head I knew they were strangers. And as I passed my mom, she suddenly held my hand and I froze. Do you need a ride to the library? No, I need the exercise, so I can walk there. I felt so relieved when I got out of the house, and I felt like I was being followed. But every time I looked back, there was no one. Until I noticed our gardener standing next to a dustbin, acting like a street person. Mom obviously asked him to wear that disguise and follow me, but I was no fool. I continued to walk towards the library, and then ran in and out the back door until I lost Mom's spy guard. When I finally reached the Home Affairs Department, my heart almost stopped when the lady told me that my ID document was fake. How can I find out my real identity?
Simple. Your fingerprint. You can fake a document, but not a fingerprint.
Once my fingerprint was taken, the police suddenly appeared and took me in for questioning. Why am I here?
We have been looking for you and your sister for 17 years. When your parents passed away, they left you under the care of the state. But when we went to search for you, you and your sister were nowhere to be found.
But all this doesn't make sense. The parents who took care of me gave me everything.
The people who have been illegally taking care of you have been your uncle and his wife. Your parents had 2 trust funds. One was to give you and your sister the best life possible as kids. But your fake parents withdrew all that money, and the next trust fund is more than millions and will be released when you and your sister turn 18.
When the officer was about to tell me what to do next, my phone rang, and it was Mom. You should come home, Jessica. Something has happened to Rebecca. I immediately ran out of the station after I got Mom's call. My sister was the only real family I have, and I would protect her at any cost. When I got back home, the people whom I thought were my parents were waiting for me in the living room with Nancy. What happened to Rebecca? Where is she?
We'll tell you once you tell us what you've been up to.
What is going on here? Why are you here, Nancy?
Because you've been living my life all this time with my parents who sacrificed their time with me to be fake parents to you, all for the sake of money. And now, you will not ruin things for us.
Fine, you can have all the money, just tell me where Rebecca is. I could hear Rebecca screaming through the walls. Please, just let her go. You will have to wait until it's her real birthday, which is actually in 2 days' time. And then, while these wicked money-greedy people were smiling wickedly in front of me, a gang of cops busted into the house. I guess Rebecca and I will have our happy birthday after all, while you rot in prison. Rebecca's fake mom was also found and arrested, and my real sister and I lived happily ever after. The lesson here, money-greedy people always get caught out, but an honest living will take you a long way.
I couldn't believe how much I was shaking. Jason, the captain of the basketball team, and my crush, was getting his books out of this locker right next to me. How did I get so lucky he had been assigned to a locker so close? I couldn't let this opportunity pass me by. I've always felt like I'm in the background at school. I could sink into the wallpaper and no one would even notice. My best friend Cindy has said she doesn't mind being so low profile. But when it comes to talking to guys, it has always stopped me from getting what I wanted, and I wanted Jason to notice me. Little did I know, I was about to make that happen. Before I tell you how I did it, make sure you like and subscribe to Storytime Animated for more insane stories like mine. I was just about to say hello when Rebecca stepped in front of me, sipping a smoothie. She's the queen bee of our school, and, like a bee, she could sting you with every one of her words.
Nice scrunchie, Sam. I love how it matches your dress. They're both equally tacky.
I turned back to my locker, blushing so much I thought my head would explode. Jason looked uncomfortable. Rebecca turned to him quickly, whipping me in the face with her long brown hair.
Hi, Jason. I'll be at your game tonight. I hope you win.
Jason smiled.
Thanks, Rebecca. See you then.
He started down the hall as the bell rang. I went to follow him, but then I felt a cold, wet liquid slide down my back and all over my dress. I turned quickly to see Rebecca and her friends laughing. She had poured her smoothie down my back.
Sorry, Sam. I just thought the color of my smoothie would look better on you.
I ran home to change. My mom saw my tears and asked what was wrong, so I explained what had happened. I couldn't believe Rebecca would do that to me. I told her I was going to keep a low profile from now on, like Cindy. My mom got this sly look in her eyes. I do the same thing when I have an idea. We look similar, the same wild blonde hair, the same blue eyes, but she's way prettier. I always wanted to grow up to look just like her, but so far, it didn't look like that was bound to happen. She put her hand on my arm comfortingly.
Sweetheart, fading into the background will just let Rebecca win.
She went upstairs and came down with something glittering in her hands, a butterfly hair clip.
This belonged to your grandmother. She was a famous film actor for many years. She was beautiful, confident, and was never in the background of any scene. She would want you to have this.
I took the clip and put it in my hair. I did feel a little more confident. My mom smiled at me and said,
Use it wisely, okay?
Whatever that means. But when I got to school the next day, I couldn't believe the change. People were looking at me in the hallway in a way they never had before. They waved and smiled. This was crazy. I saw Jason at my locker and was going to say hi when Rebecca stepped in front of me. She looked so shocked. Her friends flocked around me and showered me with so many compliments.
Oh my God, I love your hair. Where did you get this dress? It's awesome. Can I borrow those shoes sometime, Sam?
Rebecca looked furious. Then she smiled and said,
Do you want to sit with us at lunch, Sam? You just have to tell me what you did with your hair.
Maybe she was coming around? At lunch, I went past Cindy and my table and headed to the back with Rebecca and her friends. They kept complimenting me and asking me questions. I'd never felt so popular. Rebecca just sat there quietly, smiling a little bit. Then she crushed my entire world.
Seriously, Sam? What did you do to your hair? I want to try it, now that I'm dating Jason.
I felt like the lunchroom fell out from beneath me. I couldn't believe he would date such a horrible person. I fell completely silent for the rest of lunch and didn't eat anything. After lunch, I went to the bathroom and ran into Cindy. Sometimes we hang out there to avoid the loud lunchroom and people like Rebecca. She looked at my hair too.
Wow, what'd you do? You look great.
I started crying. I think it's this hair clip my mom gave me, but it doesn't matter. Rebecca stole Jason and now I'm back in square one. Cindy blushed.
I don't mind being in square one. We always have been. Isn't that okay?
She totally didn't get it. That's how Rebecca wins. I huffed and left the bathroom. When I got home that night, I found my mom having tea with a beautiful woman with long brown hair and glasses. She told me this was my Aunt Lucille, who would be staying with us for a little bit.
It's so nice to meet you, Sam. Thank you for welcoming me into your home. Your mother and I have had our differences, but she's been so helpful. You see, I'm here to find my daughter. I gave her up for adoption when she was a baby, and I want to reconnect with her.
She kept staring at me with that sly look my mom has. She was totally weirding me out. I could barely do my homework just knowing she was in the house. When I woke up the next day, the worst thing had happened. My hair clip was gone. I tore my room apart looking for it, but when I didn't find it, I knew exactly who had taken it. Cindy was the only person I had told about the hair clip. When I got to school, no one even recognized me. To make matters worse, I couldn't find Cindy. I saw a horde of girls huddled around someone, but I couldn't push my way through them to see who it was. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Rebecca and Jason at his locker. She went in for a kiss and he turned his head quickly. Maybe there was still hope, but not if I couldn't get my hair clip back. At debate practice, I finally found Cindy. She had the new hair clip on and looked amazing. I knew it. The teacher told me and Cindy to debate artificial intelligence in technology. If I couldn't get my hair clip back, I'd at least put her in her place. I went in front of the group for an opening statement. Artificial intelligence in technology is damaging because intelligence will include human traits. Humans have many negative traits such as deception, I looked right at Cindy when I said it, and betrayal. These human qualities will prevent the technology from doing its assigned tasks, and therefore, it will become useless.
Well, maybe some people are just scared the technology will become better than them, and they need to be taken down a notch.
Cindy stood up from her desk, her face red. The entire class erupted in applause. My statement was so much better, but she was so confident right now. I couldn't take it anymore. You stole my hair clip, give it back. Cindy's face went white and she stomped her foot.
I did not steal it. My birth mom gave it to me. She just came into town and said I deserved it. You're just jealous because you aren't popular anymore.
Cindy tossed her long brown hair to turn to the class.
In conclusion, artificial intelligence is good for humanity because of its many applications. For example, artificially giving a person like my opponent some intelligence.
The class burst into laughter and I ran home. When I arrived, Lucille was leaving. My mom was in the doorway with her arms crossed, looking angrier than I had ever seen her. When I passed Lucille, she smiled.
It was so nice to meet you, Sam. My daughter Cindy says you've had such a wonderful few days at school. Maybe if you keep it up, you can become as successful as her someday.
My mom totally yelled at her right there on the front lawn and Lucille left as fast as she could. It was hard to believe they were sisters. Inside, my mom explained that my grandmother had given the hair clip to my mom, but Lucille was jealous. She stole it and used it to take away my dad. My mom managed to steal it back, but the damage was done. My mom was clearly trying not to cry, so I hugged her. I was really proud she was willing to stand up to someone like that. I felt like maybe I should do the same. At school, Cindy had become a total nightmare. She even started pushing Rebecca around, but the icing on the cake was, she started dating Jason. She had totally tricked him. She looked so different, she convinced him she was a new student. He had broken up with Rebecca a while ago, but she was still clearly upset about it. So upset, we even started hanging out in the bathroom together to get away from Cindy. I told her all about the hair clip and my grandma. She listened closely, then smiled a bit.
Sam, I have a plan, but we need Jason's help. We have to tell him who Cindy really is.
I was nervous to break this news to him. He'd be really upset. Rebecca smiled even wider.
I don't think he'll be that upset. In fact, I think you should be the one to tell him.
I didn't know why she was being so secretive, but hair clip or no, I had to tell him. When I ran into Jason at our lockers, I finally got the courage. I told him Cindy was a liar and had just used Rebecca and me to get to him. He actually smiled and looked a little sad. Then he told me he had sort of known. He really couldn't stand how she had been treating everyone, and he would do everything he could to help. The next day, Rebecca and I watched from around the corner while Cindy and her posse went to Jason's locker. She pecked him on the cheek and giggled.
Where's Sam? I was looking forward to presenting her with the Worst Split Ends award this morning.
Jason frowned, then replaced it quickly with a smile.
It's no fair with you around, babe. Your hair is gorgeous.
But when he ran his hand through her hair, he pulled the clip right out. Cindy's hair rocketed out from her head like she had put her finger in a light socket. Everyone gasped. Jason threw the clip in his locker and slammed the door. Leaning against it, he said,
I don't want to see you anymore, Cindy. I think you're mean, and honestly, I've always liked Sam. I thought you were like her, but it turns out you couldn't be more different.
Cindy ran right past us as she left school. She gave me the dirtiest look, but I didn't care. She deserved it. When I turned, Jason was right in front of me smiling.
I meant what I said. I've always liked you. I just couldn't find the courage to talk to you.
I blushed, then had a crazy thought. Hey Jason, when I first got the hair clip, did you notice anything different about me? He frowned and shook his head.
Not at all.
I kissed him. That night, my mom and I put the hair clip back in the attic. I definitely didn't need it anymore. Tell me all you know.
No! Never!
I zapped her with the taser again.
Ah!
I said, tell me all you know.
Fine.
My mom started crying.
Fine, I'll tell you.
So, you're probably wondering why I'm interrogating my mom. Well, it'd make more sense if I started from the beginning. So if you want to find out why, make sure you stay tuned till the end of the video. Before I was born, my parents were rich. Not mega rich, but they had a mansion. So I guess they were pretty rich. Anyway, You could say that they had a pretty perfect life. Until I came along. I'm what you'd call a devil, per se. I like trouble. I seek trouble. I love trouble. One time, when I was about 3 years old, I set fire to my parents' Porsche because I was bored. Good times. Anyway, my parents' perfect life completely changed once I came into the picture. They had to deal with vandalism, bills, angry principals, angry neighbors, all that jazz. So you can imagine their disappointment when they found out Mom was pregnant. I was about 7 years old at the time. They brought home a baby boy, and as soon as I laid eyes on him, I knew I was going to protect him. I adored the baby boy, who they ended up calling Jesse. As it turned out, Jesse wasn't the devil child my parents expected him to be, like me. Jesse was so sweet, so kind, and as he grew and grew, we discovered he was so smart. Easily the top of his class. And if he wanted to skip 3 grades above, he could have. But my parents wouldn't let him because they said that would be too weird, whatever that means. Anyway, in all other realms, I was a devil. But when it came to little Jesse, I treated him like an angel. I loved him so much, much more than my annoying parents, and I wanted him to have the best life. I dreamed of getting a good job and paying off Jesse's college tuition, because of course he would go to college and become the greatest scientist ever. I actually started getting good grades once I set my goals on that. Maybe I did have a little smartness in my genes. Jesse and I would play a lot when he came home from school. We played video games, our favorite was Super Smash Bros., and we did karaoke a lot too. One time we had the song Never Gonna Give You Up stuck in our heads for so long that we would only speak in the song's lyrics. Never gonna, I started while pouring cereal.
Give you up!
Jesse smirked as he bit into his toast.
Never gonna!
Let you down!
Would you two shut up?
Mom looked like she had enough of our rickrolls. Anyway, Jesse actually helped make me a better child. We had a good life. Things were going well. Until everything went wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Jesse went to a different school to me, one for smart kids, and he usually got home at around 5 in the afternoon. I was waiting for him on the front doorstep, but 5 o'clock came and no Jesse. I was starting to get worried. I told my parents, they didn't even seem bothered.
He'll show up sometime.
But then 6 o'clock came along and Jesse still hadn't come home. Something must have happened to him.
Relax. He's a big boy. He can look after himself.
He's 10!
He is?
Ugh! I called the school. They said Jesse had already left at 4 p.m. The bus was only a 30-minute ride away. He should have been home by now. I decided to call the police and file a missing persons report. And this is the part of my story where the craziness really begins. Days passed until it had become a week since anyone had last seen Jesse. I was frantic, losing my mind, putting up flyers, asking anyone if they'd seen my little brother. My parents, on the other hand, they acted like nothing had happened. I hadn't even seen them cry, not even once. Weren't the parents supposed to be the ones fretting over this, not me? But no, they didn't have a care in the world. I decided to hire a private investigator. I didn't tell my parents. Of course, they wouldn't let me. They thought it would be a waste of money. So I stole money from them to pay for the investigator. What? I told you I was the devil. And especially when it came to Jesse, I would do whatever it'd take to get him back. Anyway, a few days passed before the private investigator called me back with news.
I have footage of your brother being kidnapped.
What?
He was taken around your home at about 5 o'clock.
Oh my God, can you send the footage over?
Sure, it's pretty hard to make out who it is though. Don't get your hopes up.
Okay, just sent it. My computer pinged with an email from him and an attached file. I opened it up, and sure enough, the security camera footage showed Jesse walking down the street right in front of our house. Then some car pulling up and snatching him. Oh my God! I replayed the video, and that's when I saw it. The person who had taken him was wearing high heels. Blue high heels, to be exact. And I would recognize those heels anywhere. A few minutes later, I walked into the living room. Mom and Dad were watching TV. I looked down at my mom's feet. Lo and behold, blue high heels. Could my mom really have kidnapped Jesse? Was my dad in on it too? Was this why they were acting so calm? I decided to confront them then and there. Did you kidnap Jesse? My parents froze. They looked at each other.
Mandy, how could you say something like that?
I have footage of you taking him, Mom. I know you did it. Mom looked like she was starting to panic. She looked at Dad, and I could tell they were thinking one thing. We have to get rid of her. Well, I wasn't gonna let them do it, so I did the first thing that came to mind. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a pan, and bonked them both on the back of the heads before they could even think to attack me. A few hours later, they woke up, tied to chairs in our basement. Tell me all you know!
No, never.
I zapped Mom with the taser. Finally, she relented.
Fine. Listen, Mandy, it's not what you think.
You kidnapped Jessie. Mom looked at Dad.
Well, yes and no.
Huh? Stop speaking in riddles.
Honey, she isn't speaking in riddles. It's true that we took Jesse.
Okay, so
But we didn't kidnap him. We returned him.
returned him? Returned him to who? My parents looked at each other again. I raised the taser as a threat. To who?
To his creators.
I paused. What?
To his creators. Your brother, he's a robot.
The taser fell from my hands and dropped to the floor. What did you just say?
He's a robot. Your mother never gave birth to him. He's a robot designed in a lab, and he was given to us as part of his real-world testing. We were supposed to raise him for 10 years, then return him to his creators. It's all part of the deal.
I couldn't even speak. I was too speechless.
We were paid a lot to keep him and raise him. That's how we managed to pay off all your damages and the troubles you've caused.
Jesse is a robot?
Yes.
How could you return him? He's your son.
He's not our son. He's a robot, Mandy.
Don't you love him? My mom hesitated.
We can't love a machine, Mandy. We knew this from the beginning.
I don't care if he's a machine. I'm gonna bring him back.
You can't. He's gone now, Mandy. He might already be destroyed. It's too late.
But I didn't care. I was gonna get my brother back, even if he was a robot. I spent the next 10 minutes getting the location of Jesse's creators from my parents. Then I locked them up in the basement. I didn't call the police. I wasn't sure what would happen if I did. I prepped all my gear: rope, knives, a laser cutter, my dad's Jeep. If you're wondering where I got the laser cutter from, don't ask. Let's just say I was an adventurous child. I pulled up the Jeep, thankful that I had taken those driving lessons. Then I sped off. Jesse was being held at a base far off in the countryside. 5 hours later, I arrived. I pulled on my black clothing, looking like a ninja. I hid the Jeep behind some bushes and proceeded on foot. I'll rescue you, Jesse. Getting in was much easier than expected. I guess they never anticipated anyone discovering their location. All I had to do was climb up the 50-foot wall using my rope and an anchor. Well, I guess it wasn't that easy, but for me, this was child's play. I climbed over the wall and walked down some stairs. Inside, it was quiet. A few people were milling around, but not that many. There were signs pointing everywhere. I started to walk and read the signs, seeing if any pointed to Jesse. I stopped at one door that said JE551E. That had to be Jesse. I entered, and sure enough, there was my little brother. Except he was a robot, and his limbs were all removed, detached like a broken toy. I stifled a cry. Jesse? He didn't respond. I approached him slowly. I tapped his face. He opened his eyes and looked at me. I smiled. Don't worry, Jesse, I'll get you out of here. I expected Jesse to smile back, to look relieved, something, but what he said next shattered my heart into a million pieces.
Who are you?
Oh no.
I'm afraid he doesn't remember you.
I spun around. A man in a scientist's outfit stood at the door. Let my brother go.
He's not your brother. He's a robot, a social experiment, and he will be deactivated very soon.
No! I charged at the man, but guards entered and grabbed me before I could do anything. They dragged me away from Jesse. No! Jesse! They put me in a chair and placed handcuffs on me. I looked at Jesse. He was watching all this with emotionless eyes. Had Jesse really forgotten me?
And now, the deactivation procedure.
The girl is still here.
She can watch.
Are you sure? Isn't that a little traumatic?
It's a good experience for her.
I struggled against my handcuffs, but they wouldn't budge. The scientists surrounded Jesse, and I saw one of them raise a big red button. The scientist reached a finger, about to press down and murder Jesse. I panicked. I had to do something. I had to save Jesse, and I did the first thing that came into my head. Never gonna give you up. The scientist stared at me.
What?
Never gonna let you down.
What is she doing?
Is she singing?
Never gonna run around and
Desert you!
I looked at Jesse. He was staring at me now with recognition in his eyes. He remembered me. Jesse, they're about to deactivate you. Quick, do something. Jesse turned around, eyes widening at all the scientists surrounding him. And then he reassembled himself into his normal body. He broke free of his restraints and rushed towards me.
Hold on!
I grabbed hold of him and suddenly we were flying. He had rocket boots on his feet. Crazy, I know. Jesse broke a hole into the roof and we flew away, far away from all the scientists and machinery and everything. We kept flying until we arrived back home at the mansion. Oh, Jesse, I'm so glad you're okay. I hugged him. But we can't stay here. Mom and Dad know everything. We have to run away or they'll take you again. Jesse nodded.
You're right.
And that's what we're doing right now. We're on the run from our parents, from Jesse's creators, from everyone. I have to keep Jesse safe. Wish me luck.
Recently, I'd felt like people were following me. I always felt a presence around me whenever I left the house, but when I turned to search for and catch a culprit, there was always no one. I always close my room curtains nowadays because whenever I open them, I can feel eyes watching me. I never saw anyone, but I could always feel them. I should have told my parents, and perhaps I should have been scared to go out, but I believed that nothing bad could ever happen to anyone in our small, safe town. I was wrong. Hello, I'm Alondra. I had what you'd probably call a perfect life. A good family, good house, and happy life. At least, that's what I thought, until I experienced an accident that turned my whole life upside down. An accident that made me discover that my parents weren't actually who I thought they were. This story is about how I discovered that my so-called perfect life was a total fake. Like, subscribe, and keep watching to know the crazy things that happen next.
It's a perfect 20 party!
Puda screamed and danced while we set up decorations for my birthday party. Puda and I had known each other since childhood. We practically grew up together as neighbors and we never stopped being friends no matter what happened.
But Alondra, don't you think that the guest list is a little bit too long? Maybe you should stop promoting already. Do you want to host a party or a festival? Your friends from high school and college are coming. Your parents have invited people from their company. I'm worried. Can we really take care of this crowd?
Puda, Puda, Puda. You worry too much. This is my perfect 20 party. It has to be huge. We only turned 20 once, and besides, my parents are taking care of everything.
Fine then. It's 6 p.m. already. Can we go home? I'm really tired, and the event hall staff have all gone home too.
If you're tired, you should go home, Puda Kali. I have to make sure that my decorations are perfect. My party is tomorrow and I can't afford to let anything go wrong. I will be leaving here from 8 to 9 p.m. Go.
Are you sure you'll be safe alone?
Nothing bad ever happens in our town. Don't be scared. Go. I pushed Puda out of the hall. She'd done more work than any of my other friends, almost as much work as I had. So it was only fair for me to let her rest if she said that she was tired. I continued setting up the event hall until I was sure that it was perfect for my perfect 20. I looked at my watch and it was 9 p.m. My time estimation was right. I picked up my school bag and left the hall. Immediately, I stepped out, that weird feeling came back. Someone was watching me. Everywhere was quiet and I couldn't see a single soul in that part of town. Fear quietly crept up on me. I took a deep breath and started walking home really fast. Of all days, I chose today to walk. I left my car at home and now I was being stalked. I could feel someone following me. The person was so close that Wait a minute. Why did the presence suddenly become so close? Could someone be right behind me? I turned around swiftly and saw a huge black van following me from behind. OMG, they weren't even bothering to hide anymore. What could this mean? I was scared out of my mind, so I started running. Once I started this, the black van stopped and entered another street. Despite this, I kept running. I hope I've lost or scared them off. My house wasn't far from where I was anymore, so I kept running. If only I could get home in time. I'll be safe if only I could. The van suddenly materialized in front of me. They'd taken a shortcut and blocked me off. No! 2 masked men exited the car and approached me. I tried to run, but I was already cornered and all I could do was struggle. I struggled so much while they dragged me into the car that I somehow knocked myself out. I woke up a few minutes later and found myself in an abandoned warehouse. The 2 masked men had taken off their masks, and there was a 3rd man sitting with them, all unmasked and patiently waiting for me to wake up. "Who are you guys?" I screamed once I woke up. "My parents are friendly with the cops. I'll get you all arrested. I'll mess you all up."
The cops are useless people. They can't hurt us. Don't scare her, you idiot! Don't you think the kidnap is enough of a scare? How is it scary to tell her the cops are useless? Isn't that the truth? Don't use the cops to threaten us. Try using your parents. Shut up!
My parents? What do you mean?
Your parents really haven't told you anything, huh? They're really confusing people. But why haven't your parents told you everything about your family yet? I mean, you're planning your 20th. You're old enough. Could it be you're a bad child?
I am not a bad child. I'm a perfect child. My parents are perfect and my family is perfect. I screamed, sitting up.
Gee, sorry. It was just a question. Don't bite my head off.
The 3rd kidnapper said, carrying his hands up. Was I just imagining things, or did these kidnappers seem kind of harmless? Why am I here? My parents will start getting worried soon.
Your parents haven't been submitting their monthly reports, so the organization was getting worried. We've tried contacting them multiple times, but we've never been able to reach them, and they haven't bothered to reach out to us either. We wanted to find out if they were safe and if their mission was still on track. But it seems like taking you for questioning was a bad idea. You're useless.
Organization? Mission? Are you kidding me right now? Is this a pre-birthday prank by my friends? My parents work in 9-to-5 office jobs, and if they're defaulting on something, I'm sure they discuss it with their boss in the company building. Why do you have to kidnap me to find out if they're okay?
9-to-5 jobs? That's just a side hustle. Your parents are actually spies. Let us fill you in, since your parents are defaulting in that aspect. Listen carefully.
The unmasked kidnappers, now masked, dropped me off in front of my house and waved.
Be a good little girl now. Don't be too stubborn, okay?
First of all, I am not a little girl. I'm turning 20 tomorrow. I'm an adult already. I screamed as the van drove off. Was it weird that I still sensed that I was being followed? Despite the fact that I just had an exposing discussion with the people who'd been following me for months. I ignored my gut feeling once again and proceeded to walk into my home. These kidnappers just told me that everything I'd ever known was a lie. My parents, who worked 9-to-5 jobs but always made time for me, who never missed any of my PTA meetings or competitions growing up. My perfect parents, who never once argued or yelled at me or one another, weren't who I thought they were. They weren't even really married, and I wasn't their daughter. According to the kidnappers, my parents were spies sent by the organization they worked for to watch and report the activities of one of the families living in the suburbs who were suspected of portraying supernatural abilities. The Kali family. My friend Buddha Kali's family. My parents never really got married. They'd adopted me and acted as a perfect family to conceal their real identities. Everything was fake. Of course, I didn't believe the outrageous claims at first, but the pictures, videos, documents, and the superpowers that the kidnappers had, which they'd shown me, convinced me otherwise. My mom ran and hugged me once I came home.
We were so worried. What happened?
I stared at them, and as my dad looked into my eyes, I could feel that he'd discovered that I'd found out everything, almost like he could read my mind. Did he have supernatural abilities too? How had I not noticed this before?
Let's sit down and talk about this.
I unwillingly obeyed.
Tell us how you found out.
My dad commanded, and I unwillingly obeyed again. Was he controlling me? I told them everything about the kidnapping incident and my dad's side.
Everything those men told you is the truth, or at least their version of the truth. Yes, we were tasked with watching the Kali family for suspicious or supernatural activity surrounding them, but that is not the whole story.
What's the whole story then?
You're really our daughter. I got pregnant for your father, and that wasn't permitted in our organization, so I got a friend that was quite powerful in the organization to pull some strings and set up a fake operation. An operation that would make me and your father live together without suspicion from the organization. We're also really married, sweetheart. The organization just doesn't know this.
If you wanted to be free from the organization, why did you stop sending your monthly reports then?
I thought it was your mother doing it.
And I thought your father was doing it.
I heard a shuffle close to the window and I ran to see what made the noise, but I saw nothing once I got there. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling once again, though. Someone had been watching us. I burst into tears and my parents comforted me. My parents may have lied to me, but they were still my perfect, lovely parents. I forgave them and went to bed, waking up in bright spirits for my perfect 20th birthday party. I celebrated my birthday like it was the party of the century. Everything felt like a dream. The gifts I got outnumbered the guests, so you can imagine how excited I was. That was until my dad suddenly approached me and handed me his phone.
Take this and hide under the staircase. Let me get your mom. We're leaving.
I looked at the phone and on it, there was a text. Get out of there with your family right now. The Collies know about you and I think they have hatched a plan to get rid of you. Wait a minute. I thought the Collies weren't really supernaturals. My dad pushed me towards the staircase and disappeared. I hid under the staircase like my dad had instructed and waited quietly for my parents. They finally arrived and I was about to run out to meet them when they suddenly stopped moving. My dad signaled me to stay put, then I noticed that they were looking at something at the foot of the staircase. I could see everything from my hideout, and they were looking at the Collies, Puda and her parents.
What do you want from us?
I think the question should be, what do you want from us? So you've been spying on us all these years. Did you find anything?
How did you find out? You didn't find anything for 20 years? Wow, we must be really good at our jobs then. Or you must be really bad at yours. The sickness we created just seems very natural.
Well, we weren't really looking.
You're responsible for all the sick people that have been dying? Where's Alondra? It's thanks to her that I found out who you guys are. I followed her home after she got kidnapped and released, and heard your confession to her. Heck, to think that I was worried about her. Let's end this quickly and quietly.
The Collie family started mumbling some incantations together, but then my mom's hand began to glow. It seemed like she was forming some kind of force field, but everything stopped all of a sudden and both my parents began turning to stone. What was going on? I screamed out of fear and something like a wave came right out of my chest, knocking back the Collies and making them unconscious. My parents stopped turning to stone and returned to their normal form. Once my dad was freed, he quickly rushed and placed the enchanted necklace on the necks of the Collie family. The necklace was to stop them from harnessing their magical powers. He then tied them up and called for backup. They took the Collies through to the back of the building where no one could see them. As I lay in my mother's arm, drifting off to what I believe was unconsciousness, she whispered in my ears.
We're supernaturals too. We're just tasked with bringing in the bad guys. Don't worry, everything will be fine from now on. We're quitting.
Sylvia, oh my god, you're so pretty. Yeah, your hair is so perfect.
And your skin, how's it so smooth? You've got to share your skincare routine with me.
I was used to everyone making a fuss over me, and when I ran into those freshman girls at my high school that morning, I wasn't surprised. Everyone either knew me or knew about me. And one thing that was for sure was that everyone wanted to be me. For me, this popularity was like food. I didn't know how I'd live without people constantly telling me how beautiful and perfect I was. Then something so awful that I never imagined possible happened, and it changed my life forever. Keep watching if you want to find out what that was. Before school started that morning, I was sitting outside on a bench under my favorite tree. Two guys were trying to make small talk with me about something dumb, and I was thinking like, whatever, this is normal, they're all obsessed. Then they turned away from me, and I noticed that everyone around was staring in one direction. I looked, and there she was, exiting the latest Lamborghini in the most fashionable clothes I'd ever seen anyone wearing at school. She looked like an upgraded version of me and was developed in all the right places. For the first time in my life, I felt jealous of another girl. Like, really jealous. I was literally boiling inside. As she walked up the steps to enter the hallway, it was like everyone stopped talking or doing anything, just to stare at her. No one paid any attention to me at all. I went to my first class and looked for my boyfriend Jimmy. silly name. Yeah, I know. But he was hot, so it didn't matter. He was already there, so I went to sit next to him. He whispered sweet nothings into my ear that made me feel better for a while, but then she walked in. What the hell? I thought. How can she be in my class? Jimmy looked away from me and stared at her like she was an angel. I pinched his arm so he could snap back to reality and gave him a really mean look. A few seconds later, our teacher walked in and took her place at the front of the class.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to your new classmate, Isabella. She just moved here from Switzerland. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm so happy to meet you all.
Everyone smiled at her, and I wanted to throw up. There was no way I could compare with curves like that. I was the queen here, and she was trying to change that. That afternoon, I went home depressed. I sat on my bed and scrolled through TikTok because that always cheered me up. But eventually, I got bored with that, and just as I was about to put the phone away, an ad popped up, and I was hooked from the first line.
Are you feeling down because you don't have the most beautiful body in existence? Well, frown no more because we can help you to achieve perfection. In fact, we guarantee it. With just one pill a day for 3 months, we can transform you from basic to spectacular. It sounds too good to be true, but it isn't. Listen to all these awesome testimonials.
I watched the testimonials and saw pictures of women who looked horrible in comparison to me, transformed into total babes. I was instantly persuaded, so I went to my dad's office, took his credit card, and ordered lots of pills. The next day, I went to school feeling a bit more confident. My order was going to arrive that evening, so I had nothing to worry about. But when I got into my classroom, I saw Isabella sitting on Jimmy's lap laughing, probably at one of his stupid jokes. I grabbed the first thing I found, which just happened to be a whiteboard marker, and threw it at them. What the hell do you think you're doing? Get off my boyfriend!
Chill, she isn't doing anything wrong. You don't have to get up, baby. Stay right where you are.
Isabella just looked at us and smiled. What an idiot. Jimmy, I can't believe you. Well, if you're going to be this comfortable with any girl, then you can consider this relationship over.
Cool. Isabella, you single?
He smiled at her and I couldn't believe it. It was her second day, and she'd already stolen my boyfriend. The rest of my day was also awful. Everyone focused on Isabella and ignored me. I felt so relieved when I got home and found my package in front of my doorstep. I picked it up and went straight to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I took the first pill, then went to work on some homework. The next morning, I got up feeling confident. I went downstairs to have breakfast with my family. I sat down, and my mom brought a jug of orange juice to the table, but suddenly, she stared at me as if she'd never been so scared in her entire life and dropped the juice all over the floor.
What happened to you?
What, Mom?
Look at your hands.
I looked at my hands and screamed. I had 3 extra fingers on each hand. Mom, I honestly have no idea how this happened. Please don't make me go to school today. I can't be seen like this.
I have to take you to the hospital.
No, Mom. It will be okay tomorrow. The rest of my family was too shocked to say anything. My dad was frozen. I went to my room trembling. I picked up the box of pills and called the number provided on the back.
Perfect Body Pills customer service, how can we help you?
I woke up with 6 extra fingers. You didn't inform me of these side effects.
You didn't read the fine print.
What fine print?
It's going to get worse before it gets better. Your body is simply adjusting to the chemicals in the pills. A few awkward things will happen, but don't worry. At the end of the 3-month period, you will be perfect. But
what?
If you stop taking them before the 3 months are over, whatever deformity you have at the time will remain permanent. So if you don't take the pill tonight, you're going to have 16 fingers forever.
This is crazy! I screamed and hung up. I mean, what else was there to do? I locked myself in my room all day. Jimmy didn't even try to call to ask why I wasn't at school. I guess he was too preoccupied with that stupid Isabella. That night, I took my pill, and the next morning I woke up and breathed a sigh of relief. My hands were back to normal. But then I went to the bathroom mirror to brush my teeth and screamed. My nose hairs were so long they reached my lips. After freaking out for a little while, I got some scissors and cut them off. Phew, at least this one has an easy solution, I thought. I got ready for school and sped out the door. The first week was weird, but I eventually got used to waking up with a new problem every day. One morning I woke up and one butt cheek was bigger than the other. And the next day, one leg was bigger than the other. Oh my gosh. And then I had red bumps all over my body and my face was swollen. I kept reminding myself that it was all for a worthy cause and that this wasn't going to last forever. I just had to find creative ways to cover up. Then when I had about a month left to go before I could finish the pills, I thought of a really evil plan. My mom had made some of her awesome chocolate cake, which Jimmy loved to eat whenever he came over. I cut a big slice and hid one of the pills in the icing. When I got to school, I found Jimmy and told him I needed to speak to him urgently. He wasn't too happy about it, but I pulled him into the janitor's closet. Hey, I'm sorry about everything that happened between us. Here, I brought you some of my mom's chocolate cake. I hope you enjoy it, and even though we aren't together anymore, I wish you the best. He smiled, grabbed the cake, winked, and left. I couldn't wait to see what irreversible, horrible thing would happen to him. It was my best day since Isabella came and ruined everything. I smiled all day and went home smiling. In fact, I almost forgot to take my pill because I was so happy. The next morning, I woke up with no eyelashes and sighed. I put on a hat that was long enough to cover it, and I went to school. I looked around for Jimmy all day, but he wasn't there. For once, I approached Isabella with a smile. Hey, I noticed that Jimmy isn't here. Is he okay?
Well, he told me he wasn't feeling well this morning. Do you want to have lunch together? I hate that we started off on bad terms.
Sure. I smiled deceptively. I know. It sounds weird, but I had another plan which involved getting Isabella to trust me a bit. When we finished our lunch, we had already managed to exchange numbers and social media handles. After school, I went to Jimmy's house pretending to be concerned about his illness. When I got there, his mom let me come in. I guess she didn't know that we'd already broken up. I went up to his room and opened the door without knocking.
What are you doing here?
He tried frantically to cover his head, but it was too late. I'd already seen it. He was bald. So you're not sick. You're just bald?
Please don't tell anyone about this.
I'll think about it. I winked and left. This was just perfect. Jimmy was conceited, and he was especially proud of his hair. He didn't come to school for a whole week, and during that time, I got Isabella to trust me more. Then do you know what I did? I gave her some of my mom's chocolate cake, of course. She gobbled it down in 3 seconds. The next day, she didn't show up at school, so I called her.
Sylvia, I woke up and you won't believe what happened to me overnight.
What happened?
All my curves are gone. I am totally flat now.
It worked!
What?
Nothing. That's sad, Isabella, but I'm sure you'll be okay soon. I hung up and felt very satisfied with myself. To make things better, it was the last day of my 3 months, and the next day I was supposed to wake up perfect. Well, that day came, and do you know what? I went to the mirror, looked myself up and down, all around, and realized that this is exactly how I looked before I started the pills. I decided that I was perfect just as I was, and that I didn't need to take anything to change that. There'll always be people who look better or worse, and I guess we just have to be content just the way we are. I'm still laughing at Jimmy and Isabella now, though. They make the most awkward couple ever because they look funny, and now I'm back to being the hottest person at school.
Ashley, would you turn that off and stop screaming at the top of your lungs? Your dad just got back from work and he's taking a nap.
Sorry, Mom, I said as I turned down the radio.
One of these days, I'm gonna break that radio into pieces.
I heard Dad say as his heavy footsteps went past my bedroom. Dad hated it when I sang. I didn't understand why when everyone else said I had a beautiful voice. Some even called it angelic. I won countless singing competitions at school, but whenever I came home with a trophy, he threw it in the trash saying I was wasting my time. My family was not rich. Dad was a construction worker while Mom stayed at home taking care of everyone.
You need to focus on your grades. Forget about all this singing.
He'd always say. Dad might as well have told me to stop breathing. Singing was my life, and my dream was to become a famous music star. Do you want your dream to come true? Please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Then hit that notification bell and see what happens.
Hey, what are you always writing in there?
Surely, a girl in my class stood over my desk. It's none of your business, I said and quickly closed my notebook.
But I want to see.
She said as she took the notebook from me. Stop it! I tried to snatch it back, but it was too late. She was already reading it out loud to the whole class.
I was born with golden lips,
she read in a high-pitched voice.
Oh my God, is this a love poem? Aw, our sweet Ashley is in love.
The whole class laughed.
Actually, it's a song. I heard her sing it. It's really nice.
My best friend Lucas said, and my face instantly turned into a tomato. I had a huge crush on him, and I'd die if he found out. I had no idea you were listening, I said shyly.
I was, and it was so cool. Come on, sing it for the whole class.
He dared me. What? No way.
I bet she's not even that good.
Shirley rolled her eyes. Actually, I am, I said confidently. I stood up and took a deep breath. The whole class now quiet, all their attention focused on me. When I started to sing, the class went silent. I was so lost in the moment, I didn't notice that Lucas was recording the whole thing. When I was done singing, the whole class erupted in cheers.
That was amazing. Don't forget me when you become famous.
If only my dad felt the same. I sat back in my seat feeling sad and defeated.
Ashley, you won't believe who commented on your video.
Lucas ran into class excited. He was referring to the video of me singing in class a few days earlier. He uploaded it to his Instagram page and the video went viral. Who is it?
It's Maria Lopez. Isn't she your idol?
What? Let me see. Maria was a famous pop star. She had millions of fans over the world, me included. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read her comment. She's asking me to reach out to her.
Are you going to?
Are you kidding? Of course. In fact, I'll do it right now. I answered while typing a reply to Maria's comment on the video. Later that day, Maria replied with an invite to her studio. I was on cloud 9.
Your hands are shaking.
Lucas said as we sat waiting for Maria. I'm so nervous. I can't believe I'm about to meet my idol.
Hey, Ashley, right?
Maria waved as she walked into the room. A guy with a camera followed right behind her. I was starstruck and I struggled to get any words out. I still can't believe this is happening. She smiled kindly and shook her hands.
You better believe it because we've got work to do. How do you feel about singing in a professional studio?
Right now?
Yes, right now. Unless you're not ready.
She's ready. Right, Ashley?
Lucas held out his hand for me and I took it.
Oh, you guys are so cute together.
We walked inside the studio where a few people were busy setting up.
So, do you have a song in mind?
How about I sing one of yours? She looked unsure.
I don't know. My songs are pretty hard to sing for a beginner.
Ashley can sing anything.
I had no idea Lucas was such a fan of my singing. Thanks, Lucas.
Okay, if you're sure, just pick a song from my new album and let's hear it.
As I began singing, I could see the doubt on Maria's face, but about a minute into the song, her eyes widened. When I was done singing, the people inside the studio stood up and clapped.
That was incredible! I'm so glad you came today. I'm going to make you a star.
What do you mean?
I want you to join my record label. I have to talk to a few people, but I'm sure they'll love you just as much as I do. What do you say?
Yes. It's totally up to Ashley.
Lucas made everyone laugh. I couldn't believe that my dream was coming true, and much earlier than I expected. I should have been jumping up and down with joy, but the thought of breaking the news to my parents terrified me. Dad had made it clear that pursuing a music career was out of the question.
Ashley? I expected much more excitement.
Maria, this has been my dream ever since I was a little girl.
Then why don't you look happy?
My parents, Dad especially, they'll never agree to it.
I can try and talk to them for you.
I knew it was a long shot, but I didn't have much choice, so I agreed to bring my parents to meet Maria the next day. When Lucas and I got to my house, Mom was preparing dinner. Mom, is Dad home yet? I need to talk to both of you.
Is everything all right, dear?
Yeah, everything's great, actually. I couldn't hide my huge smile. A few minutes later, Mom and Dad sat on our living room couch waiting for me to speak. I crossed my fingers and told them about my eventful afternoon meeting with Maria. I was so nervous, my palms were so sweaty. She offered me a record deal. She's gonna make me famous.
Absolutely not. I can't believe you went behind our backs and met with that evil woman.
Maria's not evil, Dad. I'm very lucky that she wants to help me. Please, just meet her and hear what she has to say about my future. As soon as I said that, I knew I made a huge mistake.
Your future? What does she know about your future? Is she your mother now? Are we not doing enough for you that you have to go and trust a stranger with your future? But she's really good, Mr. Stencil. Watch this video and see for yourself. I'm not watching any videos.
Dad snatched Lucas's phone and threw it across the room. Lucas, I'm so sorry. You can have my phone, I said in between sobs. I I was so angry at Dad's outburst, but I was angrier at my mom's silence during the whole thing. How could she let Dad get out of control like that? I resented them both. You know I'm turning 18 in a week. You can't stop me from signing the deal, I said defiantly.
What did you just say?
Dad looked like an enraged bull. I said I'll be 18 soon. You can't control me anymore.
Get out, now! You think you're all grown up and you don't need us anymore? Leave now!
But where is she going to go?
Mom looked horrified.
I don't care. She clearly thinks she's better than us, so let her go live her fancy life.
And that, my friends, is how I found myself back at Maria's studio with nothing but a bag full of clothes and my notebook. Maria was shocked to see me there, but she promised to do everything she could to make me a star. She also welcomed me to live with her. On my 18th birthday and a day after graduation, I signed a multi-million record deal with Maria's Butterfly Records.
Ashley's first single will be out in a few weeks, so be on the lookout, guys.
She announced to her fans a few hours after we signed the deal. I had no idea how much work went into recording one single song. I was at the studio for hours every day, sometimes going late into the night. I was not allowed to reveal the name of the song until it was released. One morning, Maria and I were having breakfast when something on the radio caught my attention.
Coming up next is Ashley Stencil with her debut single, I Was Born with Golden Lips.
Hey, that's my song! I exclaimed. I couldn't explain the feeling of hearing myself on the radio. I was so happy, but at the same time, so nervous. What if they hated my voice? I'd seen celebrities quickly rise to fame only for them to come crashing down. Turns out I had nothing to worry about. I Was Born with Golden Lips received so much praise. It became an instant fan favorite. Radio stations played the song every day for weeks. It felt like a dream. I was invited to countless interviews and radio shows. They called me the girl with the golden lips. A few weeks after my song came out, I had more money than I knew what to do with. Maria introduced me to all the right people. She helped me hire a manager, a hair and makeup artist, a stylist, and a few other people who did almost everything for me. I also moved out of Maria's house into my own, thanks to my now very fat bank account. Life was great. I was still getting used to the fact that I had fans now. People recognized me when I walked outside. They asked to take selfies with me. They even asked me to sign some autographs. Can you believe that?
You're here!
Lucas shouted when I walked into my former high school's auditorium. In a few hours, it was going to be the venue of my very first live show. Being back there was emotional for me. Months had gone by and I still hadn't spoken to my parents. Hey, I have to go get ready for the show. You'll be here, right?
I wouldn't miss it. I can't wait to see you on stage.
He gave me a quick kiss and left. Oh, did I forget to tell you? Lucas was my boyfriend now, much to my fans' delight. They even nicknamed us Cashly.
Aw, you guys are so cute. Hashtag couple goals.
Maria teased me. She was on the stage doing a sound test. Don't start. So is everything set up for tonight?
Yes, you'll be first on stage, then I'll join you after you sing your first song. Are you nervous?
Yes, but I'm ready. I just wish my mom was here tonight. Maria looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself at the last minute. Was Maria keeping a secret? Keep watching to find out. Hours later, the school auditorium was full of eager fans. I was backstage with Lucas, who was just as nervous as I was.
You'll do great. Now go!
I let go of his hands and walked on stage. The crowd went wild, and I had to wait a few minutes before I could start singing. When I started singing, all of my nerves fled. I was so caught up in the moment, I didn't notice that someone else had walked onto the stage and was singing with me. It's only when the song ended that I opened my eyes and I saw the person standing next to me. Mom? What are you doing here? The crowd went wild.
I thought you could use a backup singer.
Oh, Mom, it's so good to see you. Guys, this beautiful woman on stage with me is my mom. Wasn't she great? I embraced Mom and the roar of the crowd was deafening. It was Maria's time to come up on stage, so Mom and I went backstage. A very excited Lucas was waiting for us. Mom, how did you get on the stage?
When Lucas told me about your show, we came up with the idea of surprising you.
I spoke to Maria about it, and she made it happen.
So that's what she was hiding. We stayed for Maria's performance, then I invited my mom to my house after the show ended. When we arrived at my house, Mom couldn't hide her surprise.
Wow, this is where you live? It's so big.
I'm making a lot of money now, Mom. I smiled uncomfortably. After a few minutes of awkward silence as my mom looked around my home, we finally sat down to talk. So, how's Dad?
Your dad and I are getting a divorce.
Lucas excused himself and left the room. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry.
Don't be. I should have left him a long time ago. I wanted to be a singer just like you know? I had so many songs written down.
I didn't know that.
When you were a little girl, you found my notebook stored in my closet. In the notebook were the words to I Was Born with Golden Lips. You copied that song to your notebook and started to memorize it. It was the first song I ever wrote.
What? Why didn't you ever record it?
Your dad didn't like it when I sang, so I stopped. After you were born, I told him I was thinking of starting a music career, and he got so angry. He threatened to leave us.
It's not too late, Mom. Do you still have your notes?
Yes, I do. Why?
Because I want us to do a song together. You saw how much the crowd loved your voice. Mom's face lit up.
Oh, Ashley, you have no idea how long I've been dreaming of this.
During the weeks that followed, Mom moved in with me and we started recording our song. I can't wait for you guys to hear what Mom and I came up with. Hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss it.
You may have my mother fooled, but I never liked you. My fists clenched as I looked Omar squarely in the eyes.
And your mother is the only person that counts.
His lips curved slightly at the corners. I know that it was you.
It was me, but who's going to believe you? It's your word against mine.
His eyes darkened. We heard a gasp and turned towards it. Hey, my name is Riley. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, tap that notification bell. Let's get back to the story. I had a pretty good life till my sister was born. It was just Mom and I since my father had left when I was just 5 years old. He told Mom he was headed to the newsstand around the corner, but he never came back. For months, Mom looked for him, but I guess after a while, she just assumed he was dead. Years passed and Mom didn't date much. When she did, she'd always come home sad and eat a tub of ice cream and watch Casablanca. Our relationship was pretty solid though. She always made time for me and told me she would always be there anytime I needed her. When I was around 12, Mom began dating again, and she was genuinely happy. His name was Timothy. I watched as my once shy mom became confident and tried new things. I loved Timothy just as much as she did. After 2 years of dating, Timothy popped the question, and soon after they were married. A few months later, Mom announced that she was pregnant, and we were all excited about the new addition to the family. One night on his way home from work, Timothy was shot and robbed of his vehicle. He was announced dead by the time he got to the hospital. Mom and I were devastated. Mom was hospitalized a few days later. She was in her 3rd trimester and the doctors were worried about her and the baby. Aunt Vanessa, Mom's sister, took time from work and stayed with me while Mom was in the hospital. Finally, Mom delivered a healthy baby girl. She named Chloe and was discharged from the hospital. Aunt Vanessa went back home and I thought life would go back to normal. Boy, was I wrong. Mom became obsessed with Chloe. She would sit in a chair and watch her sleep. As soon as Chloe cried, Mom scooped her up and yes, Mom even went to the bathroom with her. I figured, okay, maybe Mom hasn't done this in a while and it's just a phase. No, it wasn't, because 2 years later, Mom was still obsessed. She said that Chloe was her only link to Timothy and she needed to keep his memory alive. You know what happened to me over those 2 years? I became invisible to Mom. I tried for her to notice me. Heck, even have a proper conversation, but I could never get her attention. I dyed my hair, got fake tattoos, and changed the way I dressed. One time, I even brought a guy home after school and we made out in the living room. But did my mother care? No, she didn't. After many failed attempts, I gave up and went back to the old me. So imagine my surprise when I came home one afternoon from school and I saw a strange man sitting in the living room with Mom and Chloe. Hi, I glanced at Mom, then the stranger. Mom blushed and cleared her throat.
Riley, this is Omar. We've been dating for a few months. I thought it was time the both of you met.
Omar stood.
Hi, Riley. Your mom told me so much about you.
And yet, she hasn't told me anything about you.
Riley!
Mom's face turned cherry red. I have homework to do. If you need me, I'll be in my room. How could Mom find time for a man, but she can't find time for me? I thought to myself as I walked to my room. As the days went on, Omar spent more time at the house, until he was there every single day. I watched as Chloe smiled and played with him. She looked so comfortable around him. I later found out that Omar was a police officer. While Mom and Chloe were mesmerized by Omar, something about him didn't feel right. He always tried to make conversation with me and brought home gifts for Chloe and I, but I wasn't buying it. Mom looked happy and I didn't want to say anything until I had proof that he was a scumbag. One night, I overheard Omar telling Mom he had to go out of town for a few days. I was relieved. I secretly wished that he would never return. A few days later, Mom approached me nervously while I was watching television with Chloe in hand.
Riley, can you watch Chloe for me? I just have to quickly run to the pharmacy.
Mom, are you actually leaving Chloe at home?
Yes, Omar said that Chloe was old enough to be without me for a while. I just need to take baby steps.
Mom handed Chloe over to me.
And don't forget to keep the door locked so Chloe doesn't go outside.
I nodded. Mom turned and walked away. I put on Chloe's favorite show and we watched it together. About 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I got up from the sofa and left Chloe watching her show. I walked to the door and opened it.
Hi, I have a package for Riley Weatherman.
That's me. The delivery man handed me the package. It came from Auntie Vanessa. I signed for the package and closed the door. When I got to the TV room, Chloe was no longer there. Chloe! I called as I went from room to room. My heart raced as I checked cupboards and under beds. Chloe was nowhere to be found. Chloe, if you come out, I'll give you ice cream. As I walked to check the other parts of the house, I noticed the front door was slightly opened. I yanked open the door and raced outside, frantically looking around. Just then, Mom pulled into the driveway. She jumped out of the car.
Riley, what's wrong?
Mom, I'm so sorry. It's Chloe. Mom pushed past me and ran into the house calling Chloe's name. Within 15 minutes, police cars were parked outside the house. They questioned me as they tried to find out what really happened. I also heard Mom crying on the phone as she told Omar what was going on. It's my fault. I forgot to lock the door, I cried.
I trusted you. I trusted you.
Mom rushed towards me, but 2 officers held her back. They took her to another room to calm down. If anything happens to Chloe, I will never forgive myself. That evening, a group of neighbors rallied together and looked for Chloe. After 6 unsuccessful hours of searching, the neighbors said that as soon as it was morning, they would search again. That night, Mom didn't speak to me. She stayed in her room and cried. I stayed by the phone in the living room, hoping and praying that the police would call saying they found her. The next 2 days felt as though I was stuck in a nightmare that I wouldn't wake up from. On the 3rd day, the doorbell rang. Mom went to open it, which was followed by a scream. I rushed to the door to see what had happened. There was a smiling Omar with Chloe in Mom's arms. Oh, Chloe! I wanted to hold her, but Mom wouldn't let me. Omar walked into the house and closed the door.
Your sister could have been seriously hurt, Riley. It's a good thing she was found safe.
Where did you find her?
Mom hugged Chloe tightly.
Someone heard whimpering in one of the tunnels at the playground and called it in.
So you mean to say Chloe was in the tunnels for the past 3 days?
It seems so.
Omar took Chloe's hand in his, but she pulled it away and turned her head from him. So then why isn't she at the hospital? What did she eat and drink over the past few days? And what are those bruises on her legs? Mom looked at the bruises.
Your sister made it to the park. She's bound to have bruises.
Omar stared at me.
Your mother almost lost Chloe because of your carelessness, and you're standing there asking silly questions?
Omar's right. He did the right thing by bringing Chloe to me. Now come on, Chloe. Let me take you to Dr. Bratt to make sure everything's okay.
After Mom, Omar, and Chloe returned from the doctor, Mom said that Chloe was healthy and the bruises on her legs would heal without a problem. The next morning, I noticed a ring on Mom's hand. She told me that Omar proposed to her the night before and she accepted. I told Mom that something didn't feel right about Omar, and maybe she should get to know him a bit more. But of course, being an adult, she ignored me and told me I didn't know what I was talking about. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed a drastic change in Chloe's behavior towards Omar. Chloe no longer ran to Omar when he came to her. She whimpered and ran away whenever he came close. Mom, however, seemed oblivious. Since she was on cloud 9 planning her wedding, one afternoon while I was watching TV, Omar came over. Mom was trying to get Chloe to stay with Omar, but she wasn't having it. She kicked and screamed. Mom just brushed it off, saying Chloe needed a nap. Not able to stand it anymore, I grabbed Chloe from Mom's hand and she immediately settled down. How can you be so blind? I screamed. Omar didn't find Chloe in the park. He was the one that took her. That's why she wasn't dehydrated when she came back home. But I guess you are willing to overlook a few things just to have a boyfriend. Omar glared at me, then turned and calmly spoke to Mom.
I've never been so insulted in my life. I'm an officer of the law. I protect people, not harm them. I think this is my cue to leave. I'll call you later.
With that, Omar left the house. Mom yelled at me to go to my room and not to come out until she told me to. After staying away for a few days, Omar returned with flowers for Mom and gifts for Chloe and me one afternoon. Apparently, Mom thought inviting Omar for lunch was a great idea, but what it really was the turning point in all our lives.
Oh no.
Mom turned to me while I was feeding Chloe crackers in the kitchen.
I have to run over to Ruth's to get my blender. I'll be right back, okay?
I nodded and Mom left. Mom never left us alone with Omar. I saw this as an opportunity to make him confess to taking Chloe. I took Chloe and placed her in my room with a few toys, closed the door, and walked to the TV room where Omar was watching a movie. You did it, didn't you? I stood in front of the TV. Omar's eyes slowly met mine.
Excuse me?
You took Chloe. You probably never even went away. You were just looking for a perfect time to make your move, then swoop in like a hero and propose to Mom. Omar stood up slowly.
You really think I would go through all that trouble?
Omar stood directly in front of me. You may have my mother fooled, but I never liked you. My fists clenched as I looked Omar squarely in the eyes.
And your mother is the only person that counts.
His lips curved slightly at the corners. I know that it was you.
It was me, but who is going to believe you? It's your word against mine.
His eyes darkened. We heard a gasp and turned towards it. There stood Mom with a horrific look on her face.
Omar, did you take Chloe?
Mom's voice cracked.
Baby, why would I harm Chloe?
He walked over to Mom and tried to take her hand, but she pulled away.
How could I be so stupid? The evidence was right there all the time. What kind of a mother am I? Omar, you need to leave.
But baby.
Omar, leave now.
Omar laughed.
I'm not going anywhere. You were wearing my ring.
Mom took off the ring and threw it at him. Omar picked it up and looked like he was about to slap Mom across the face. Mom! I screamed as I ran towards her. Omar raised his hand to hit Mom, but I tackled him to the floor. Everything happened so fast. I was able to deal him a few punches, but he also hit back hard. I heard glass shatter. Mom stood over a now hunched Omar who was holding his head. She held Chloe's hand.
Riley, let's go.
We ran out of the house and went to Ruth's. Mom told her what happened. She told me to close all the windows in the house while she called the police. By the time police arrived, the only thing left at the house was a trail of blood. Mom and I gave statements, and Mom also told them that she believed he was the one that took Chloe. Mom apologized to me for not listening, and she hoped that I could forgive her. Of course I did. She's my mom. We stayed by Ruth for a few days as Mom upgraded our security at home just in case Omar decided to show up. Both of us also decided to take self-defense classes. It took months before Mom was back to her old self. She was now laughing again and not looking out the window every 10 minutes. Eventually, we decided to move so that we could completely put that part of our lives behind us. Sadly, the police never caught Omar. That Christmas at the new house, I received a Christmas card. There was no postage or no return address. When I opened the card, it had 3 words written inside. Thinking of you. I knew it was from Omar. I didn't tell Mom anything because she had been through enough. To date, I have received 3 cards like this every Christmas. I recently signed up to be in the police academy. I refuse to live in fear, and I will do whatever needs to be done to protect my mother and sister.
What do you mean you have her in custody? I listened to the person on the other end of the line. But there must be an explanation. I'll be right there. I hung up the phone, grabbed the jacket for my suit and my briefcase, and walked out of my office. Yvonne, please hold my calls for the rest of the afternoon and shift my appointments, I told my secretary as I passed her desk. I jogged out of the building and jumped into my car. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that a mistake had been made and I needed to get to the bottom of it. Hi, my name is Mason. Have you liked this video and channel yet? If not, you are missing some amazing stories. After you've liked this video and subscribed, tap that notification bell so you'll never miss another story. I remember it like it was yesterday. I decided to leave work early and head to the park. I thought a bit of sunshine and fresh breeze would help with the migraine that rumbled in my head. With my legs stretched out, I placed my hand behind my head and leaned back. The weather was overcast and the breeze was cool. Suddenly, I felt someone trip over my legs, and a small ouch made my eyes fly open. My eyes fell upon the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I never believed in love at first sight, but then and there, I knew she was the one for me. I extended my hand. "I'm so sorry, are you okay?" She took it and I helped her onto the bench. I noticed that her knees were bruised. She stared at me.
I'll be okay, it's just a little bruise. I wasn't looking where I was going.
"Your knees? Do you need me to take you home or to the doctor to get that cleaned up?"
I live just a block away. I'll be okay. Nothing a Band-Aid can't fix.
She smiled and walked away. Over the next few days, my mind ran back to the beauty I met in the park. Her ocean blue eyes and smile that could light up any dark place etched in my mind. I should have insisted on dropping her home, or at least getting her phone number or even her name. Do you think that would have been too much? One afternoon at the supermarket, guess who was walking towards me pushing a cart? It was her. I wasn't about to let this chance pass me up, so I approached her. "Hi, I don't know if you remember me." I rubbed my hand on the back of my neck nervously, hoping I wasn't making a fool of myself.
At the park, right? I still have bruises from the first time I met you. Not easy for a girl to forget.
She winked. I laughed. Making last impressions is what I do. "My name is Mason."
I'm Eden.
We continued to shop together, and by the time we left the supermarket, we made a coffee date. We decided to meet at the coffee shop for our first date. I showed up with flowers and chocolates in hand. I looked around the shop and Eden waved at me from a corner booth at the back. "Hi, these are for you." I handed over the gifts.
Mason, thank you, you didn't have to.
I know, but I wanted to. I smiled. "Have you ordered yet?"
No, I was waiting for you.
That was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Eden and I went on a few more dates before we decided to become a couple. Eden was loving, considerate, and it seemed as though she didn't get angry ever. She always looked for ways to bring a smile to everyone's face. She volunteered at the orphanage as well as the Salvation Army. She definitely was a gem to be treasured. "I'd like to meet your parents," I mentioned one day while we were having lunch at a restaurant. Eden looked at me worriedly.
My parents aren't the easiest people to get along with.
"I've been dealing with challenging people since I took over my father's company. I'll be okay." This explained why Eden never allowed me to meet her at home. Eden sighed heavily.
I'll see what I can do.
I didn't press the matter as I realized that the conversation made Eden uncomfortable. You see, Eden still lived with her parents. She wasn't allowed to move until she was married or at least engaged. About 2 weeks later, I pulled up to Eden's and she exited the house. I removed 2 bouquets and a bottle of whiskey from the passenger seat before landing a kiss on Eden. "This one's for you." I handed her a bouquet, which she accepted graciously. Eden looked nervous. I squeezed her hand. "It'll be okay." She nodded solemnly and we walked towards the house. As soon as we entered, she called out,
Mom? Dad? Mason's here.
A tall, slender woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun emerged from a room and addressed Eden.
It's very unladylike to shout like that. Where are your manners, Eden?
Eden's face turned as red as a cherry. I stepped forward and extended my hand. "Good evening, ma'am. My name is Mason Pierre." Eden's mother ignored me and addressed Eden once more.
Go and get the table ready.
Eden shot me an apologetic look and ran off towards the kitchen, followed by her mother. The rest of the night didn't get any better. Mr. Jones, Eden's father, came out when the table was set and dinner was being served. He was a chubby, balding man with a mean expression plastered on his face.
"So you brought home another one, huh?"
Mr. Jones said as he cut into his steak.
"Is he going to use you like that last one and then dump you to marry a model?"
Well, you know Eden has always been mediocre. A mediocre job with mediocre pay. She needs to take up her role in the company as vice president. I didn't do all of this work for my only daughter not to be a part of it. But Mom, I don't...
Mrs. Jones waved her off.
I know, you want to do something meaningful with your life. Blah, blah, blah.
That entire evening, it was Eden against her parents. By the time she walked me to the front door, her eyes were red, and I knew she was on the verge of breaking down in tears. Would you like to go for a drive to clear your head? Eden shook her head and forced a smile.
I'll be okay. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?
Before I could reply, she closed the door. I walked away from the house thinking about Eden and how to get her away from her parents. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next weekend, I invited Eden to spend the weekend with my family and I. My younger sister, Judy, was coming home from college for the weekend. As we pulled up, Eden turned to me.
I hope they like the gifts I made.
I leaned over and kissed her. They will love it, and they'll also love you. Come on. Eden and I were barely out of the car when my parents and my sister bombarded us with welcoming hugs.
Welcome, Eden. We've heard so much about you.
Mom said as she steered Eden to the house.
She's really pretty.
Judy nudged me in the ribs and smiled.
I wonder why she's with you.
Ha ha ha, I said sarcastically before I shot Judy a smile. Once inside, Eden handed my family the quilts she'd made them. Everyone loved them. That afternoon, we played board games, ordered pizza, and Eden even made her famous banana bread. Everyone fell asleep, and I stole Eden away to the back porch swing. I kissed her. Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I am. Your family is amazing.
She lowered her eyes.
You're so lucky. I wish I had a family like this.
You can. I pulled out a small black velvet box from my pocket and knelt in front of Eden. Eden Jones, will you make me the happiest man alive? I know we haven't known each other for long, but will you marry me? She threw her arms around me with tears in her eyes.
Yes, I'll marry you.
My family tumbled out the back door.
She said yes. I'm so happy for you, Mason.
Mom hugged me, then Eden.
Finally, I'll have a big sister to confide in.
You did good, son. Eden, welcome to the family.
The next few weeks, Eden and I prepared for our wedding. I also gave her access to my credit and banking cards so she could get whatever she needed for the wedding. She also started a new company that focused on the education of orphan children. Of course, being a great fiancé, I invested to show my support. How much, you ask? I invested a sum of $50,000. I mean, why shouldn't I? Her business was going to help orphans get a better education. Everything was going great in our relationship. I even asked Eden to move in with me, and she agreed. I was just happy to get her away from her awful parents. As I said, everything was going great until I got that phone call. You know, the phone call I got at the beginning of the story? When I got to the mall, I headed straight to the detention area. What's the meaning of this? My eyes glared at the security guard outside the door.
Sir, you need to calm down. Your girlfriend?
My fiancé.
Your girlfriend was caught trying to steal a $10,000 bracelet.
There has to be a mistake. I'd like to see her, now. The security opened the door and we entered.
Oh, Mason.
Eden hugged me and she burst into tears. Babe, what happened? Through her tears, Eden explained that a fire alarm went off in the store while she was trying on the bracelet. When she heard the alarm go off, just like the other people in the store, she ran to safety. I looked at the security guard who confirmed that the alarm did go off. You have the bracelet, why not just let her go?
Sir, it's out of my hands. The police are on their way.
If I paid for the bracelet, will this mess go away? The security guard got in contact with the store owner. He agreed that once I paid for the bracelet, that Eden is free to go. So that's what I did. About 2 weeks later, I told Eden that I was working late. Upon arrival, I noticed that all the lights were off. All the lights in my home were never off. I rushed towards the front door. It was unlocked. Eden? Eden! I called her name and flicked every light as I entered the rooms. When I flicked the light of the bedroom, there she was tied to a chair. I rushed over to her. Eden, baby, are you okay? My hands trembled as I loosened the knots. She looked dazed and started to mumble something, but I couldn't understand what it was. I called an ambulance and the police, and they arrived about 15 minutes later. The ambulance took Eden to the hospital, and I followed as soon as I was dismissed by the police. On the way to the hospital, I called my parents as well as Eden's parents to let them know what happened. The doctor told us that she was unconscious, and they would let us know when she was awake. My parents and I sat on one end of the waiting room, and Eden's sat on the other. After a few minutes of glaring at me from across the room, Mrs. Jones got up and approached me.
You need to send Eden home at once. Never has she been attacked at home. I want her home at once.
Mom stood up and stepped between Mrs. Jones and I.
You don't think Mason is responsible for this, do you?
This time, Mr. Jones answered.
Of course he is. A man is supposed to secure his home. Your son wasn't able to do that. He is not to be trusted with Eden.
Dad chimed in and stood next to Mom.
Maybe if you were a better father, she wouldn't have wanted to run away from you. Eden is grown up and allowed to make her own choices. You people are delusional.
The next few minutes resulted in a fierce back-and-forth argument between my parents and Eden's. It probably would have gone on forever if a nurse hadn't threatened to kick us out if they didn't stop. By the time we actually got to see Eden, it was 5 hours later. I wasn't surprised when she agreed with her parents that she should move back home, at least until we got married. It would take years before Eden broke free from her parents' manipulative ways. I promised to add more security cameras and change all the bolts on the doors. At least the wedding was still on. The day before the wedding, Eden and I decided to meet at the park, the place where it all began. I prepared a picnic lunch for the both of us, and we planned to meet at the park for 12:30. At 1 p.m., Eden still had not arrived, and I was worried. I called her phone, and it went straight to voicemail. At 1:30 p.m., I drove to her parents' home to see if they knew where she was. I knocked on the door and waited. I was surprised when a stranger opened the door. "Hi, good afternoon. Is Eden in?" The man looked at me strangely.
There isn't anyone here by that name.
"Is Mr. or Mrs. Jones here? May I speak with them?"
Sorry, no one lives here by that name.
The man closed the door in my face. Just then, my phone rang. It was Judy. She told me that her check for school was declined and asked if I could look into it. I hung up and wondered about Eden. At the bank, I was told that everything from my credit and debit cards were withdrawn. I asked them how that could be when I didn't authorize anything. They told me that it was taken out by a Miss Eden Jones. My heart stopped. Eden had been toying with me all this time. But that wasn't the least of it. When I got home, everything was gone. The neighbors knew we were getting married, so they assumed we were moving to another house. Eden stole everything. You'd think I'd be upset. The truth is, I'm still in love with Eden. She was actually the best girlfriend I've ever had. Eden, if you're watching, I just want you to know that I love you. I'm sure we can work things out. Please, babe, give me a call. The wooden stairs creaked as Miranda and I walked down to the basement.
I can't wait for you to see what Grandma and I do for fun.
Miranda looked at me, her eyes twinkling. "Are you going to give me a hint?" I smiled at her. She took my hand and squeezed it gently.
Well, we capture exquisite, rare things.
When we reached the bottom of the basement, Miranda stopped. She stroked the side of my face and turned my face so our eyes met.
You have the most gorgeous eyes I've ever seen.
It was as though something clicked in my mind and I looked around the basement. A sense of dread slowly rose up in me. Before I could respond, something hit me over the head and I fell to the ground with a thud. Hey, my name is Dimitri. Like and subscribe to our amazing channel. Tap that notification bell so that you will know when we post new stories. As soon as I saw Miranda, I knew that I wanted her. There were numerous rumors at the high school that she and her grandmother were into some weird stuff. But, I mean, who doesn't have something weird about their family? It took me about a month before I was able to muster up all my courage to not only approach her, but to ask her out. I sweated nervously as she looked at me before she smiled and said yes. After dating a few months, I invited Miranda over to meet my parents. As we pulled up to my driveway, Miranda looked at me nervously.
Do I look okay? Do you think they'll like me?
I took her hand and kissed it softly. My parents are going to love you. How could they not? Dinner was a hit. My parents loved Miranda and made her feel at home. After dessert, Miranda said that it was time for her to head home. Mom and Dad hugged her. Mom held her hand and said,
I can't wait to meet your grandmother. Maybe we could have both of you over next time.
Miranda smiled and nodded, and we left. As I dropped her off at her grandma's, she turned to me.
How about you come over next Saturday to meet Grandma? She's been longing to meet you.
She smiled. I'd love to. Do you need me to bring anything?
Just bring those pretty eyes of yours.
Miranda leaned in and kissed me before she hopped out of the car. I waited until she was safe inside the house before driving off. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder if Miranda's grandmother would welcome me with open arms as my parents welcomed her granddaughter. The next few days were nerve-wracking. Meeting Miranda's grandmother was a huge deal for me, and I hoped it would turn out as successful as I wanted it to be. I mean, you only get to make a first impression once, and I wanted the first time that we met to be memorable for both of them. On the day, I pulled up to Miranda's grandmother's house at 6 p.m. sharp. I walked with a bouquet of flowers for Miranda and one for her grandmother. I nervously adjusted my clothing before I rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, Miranda opened it and she greeted me with a warm smile and stepped aside for me to enter.
Hey, handsome. Hope you brought your appetite.
I smiled and handed Miranda her bouquet of flowers.
Thank you, babe. I'll go and put these in some water.
As she walked away, she yelled,
Grandma, our special guest has arrived.
A wrinkled older woman with short gray hair and clothing 2 sizes too big hobbled the living room. Her voice cracked as she spoke.
Good night, Dimitri. Miranda has told me quite a lot about you.
Good night, ma'am. I hope that she said only good things. Miranda's grandmother smiled and nodded. I got you these, I said as I handed over the flowers. Miranda told me how much you loved lilies. Her grandmother took the flowers and smelled them.
Will you take an old lady's hand?
She extended her hand and placed it on the crook of my elbow.
Let's eat.
She smiled as we strolled towards the kitchen. After dinner, Miranda eagerly wanted to show me something in the basement. As a loving boyfriend, also hoping to spend some time alone away from her grandmother, I accepted the venture to head to the basement. The wooden stairs creaked as Miranda and I walked down to the basement.
I can't wait for you to see what Grandma and I do for fun.
Miranda looked at me, her eyes twinkling. Are you going to give me a hint? I smiled at her. She took my hand and squeezed it gently.
Well, we capture exquisite rare things.
When we reached the bottom of the basement, Miranda stopped. She stroked the side of my face and turned my face so our eyes met.
You have the most gorgeous eyes I've ever seen.
It was as though something clicked in my mind, and I looked around the basement. A sense of dread slowly rose up in me. Before I could respond, something hit me over the head and I fell to the ground with a thud. I opened my eyes groggily and shook my head as I tried to focus on my surroundings. I was tightly tied to a chair.
Oh, you're up finally.
Miranda said as she twirled in a chair in front of me.
It wouldn't have been as much fun if you were still unconscious.
I pulled against the ropes. Miranda, I don't understand. What are you doing?
As I said before, Grandma and I have this special hobby where we collect rare and exquisite things. The best part is sometimes we even get paid. Do you know how much we are being offered for just one of your eyes?
There was an awkward silence.
Too afraid to guess? Then let me tell you. One of your eyes is worth $100,000.
Suddenly, a can rolled across the floor in front of Miranda, releasing thick gray smoke.
Hey, what are you doing?
I heard shuffling, then Miranda gasped. My ropes were cut, and as I stood, I rubbed my wrists. Miranda, I think you've met my mom already, I said as I nodded in her direction. As the gas disappeared, I walked over to Miranda and held her face tightly. Her arms were tied behind her back, and Mom was holding her arm. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dmitry Volkov, and I'm a bounty hunter. Do you know how much you and your grandmother are worth? There are people in very high places that you took some things from that want revenge. I waited a few seconds before replying. Too afraid to guess? Then let me tell you. Each of you is worth $250,000. That definitely trumps the $100,000 for one of my eyes, don't you think? So I guess you've guessed by now, huh? I'm not who I said I was. I'm a bounty hunter, and I only used Miranda to gain her trust. Well, she did the same thing to me, so I guess it's only what she deserved, right? I turned to my mom. Is the grandmother down and out? Mom smiled.
Like a newborn baby.
Okay, let's get this show on the road. There is money to be made. Mom escorted Miranda outside to the black panel van where Dad was already waiting. Mom threw her in the back of the van and, just like her grandmother, tied her arms to the metal rod above their heads. Once she was secured, Dad, Mom, and I hopped into the front of the van. There was a slight drizzle which quickly turned into a heavy downpour. The traffic began to pile up and Mom looked at her watch.
We've got to get to the airstrip in 1 hour or we'll miss our chance.
Don't worry,
Dad said, focused on the road.
We've never missed a deadline, and we aren't going to miss one now. We have a helpless old woman and a teenage girl. How much trouble could they be?
Suddenly, we felt the van rock slightly, followed by a loud bang. My parents and I shared a concerned look. Dad stopped the van, and Dad and I went to check it out.
Damn it!
Dad slammed his fist into the side of the van when he noticed that the door to the van was open and our bounty had escaped. Dad and I quickly searched the jam-packed streets. A short way ahead, I see Miranda and her grandmother's head bobbing between the cars. I was amazed at the swiftness and agility of the older woman. We need to stop them before they reach Lapino Falls, or we'll lose them for good. Lapino Falls was a camping ground not too far from the highway that was densely forested with a stream running through before it formed into a waterfall. Miranda and her grandmother separated once they got off the highway. Dad followed her grandmother and I followed Miranda. Miranda bolted towards the stream that was now raging from the rain. I cornered her between the stream and myself. "You've got nowhere to run, Miranda," I yelled over the rain. As I moved cautiously towards her, she stepped backwards. Her hands flailed in the air and her eyes widened with fright as she slipped backward into the torrential water, which swept her away. Without a second thought, I dove into the water to save Miranda. Luckily for the both of us, a tree had fallen close to the mouth of the waterfall. I was able to grab Miranda before holding onto the tree for dear life. Miranda was able to climb to safety and I followed closely. Once on the bank of the stream, we lay on our backs, gasping for air. Just as Miranda was about to get up and run, I snatched her hand. "You aren't getting away that easily." We got up slowly. For a minute, as we looked into each other's eyes, as we shared a moment, Miranda pulled me in for a deep kiss, and I obliged. The kiss lasted a few seconds before she pulled away.
I really do love you, Dmitry.
She caressed my face. Her face then contorted, and a devilish smile appeared on her face as she pushed me into the stream. I seized a handful of her clothing, and we both stumbled into the water. This time, however, we fell over the 15-foot waterfall and into the pool below. Coughing up water, we both dragged ourselves to shore, looking like two stray cats, soaked and waterlogged. Miranda looked at me weirdly as she asked in a raspy voice,
What's wrong with your eye?
I coughed and then chuckled. Oh, that? I had special contacts made just so I could get on your radar and win your trust. After that, everything else was easy. Before I knew what was happening, Miranda slammed a large branch into my stomach that knocked the wind out of me. When she swung it at me again, I grabbed the stick and threw it into the water. My parents always told me to never hit girls, but this was an exception. I scrambled to my feet quickly and Miranda and I squared off. She threw the first punch and I returned rapid fire, hitting her squarely in the jaw. She stumbled backwards but was quickly able to regain her footing. Don't make me hurt you, I yelled.
You can try.
Miranda replied as she hit me with a kick in the middle of my chest that sent me flying backwards. Our fight went on for a few minutes as punches and kicks flew through the air. I was finally able to get the upper hand and pin her down.
Dimitri!
Mom's voice came through to the clearing.
Are you okay?
Yep, just another day on the job. Mom handed me a pair of handcuffs that I quickly placed on Miranda. Mom led me to the van that was just outside the forested area. Miranda's grandmother was already chained in the van, and we placed Miranda next to her. This time, Dad stayed in the back of the van while Mom took the wheel. By the time we got back on the road, the sun was peeking out from behind the clouds, and it had stopped raining. We arrived 15 minutes late to the drop-off.
You're late.
Raul, a big muscular guy, announced when we opened the van doors.
Oh, Raul.
Mom replied smoothly.
What's 15 minutes between friends? You know we always deliver.
Mom batted her eyes at him. A small smile crept to Raul's lips.
Ah, yes, the grandmother-granddaughter duo. My boss can't wait to get a hold of you.
Raul rubbed his hands together menacingly as Dad took Miranda and her grandmother out of the van.
I'll make you suffer if it's the last thing I do, Dimitri.
Miranda spat at my feet before she was dragged to the small airplane. Dad collected the money and counted it before we bade Raul farewell. As we headed home, I couldn't help but reminisce at the fun times and special moments that Miranda and I shared. A few years passed, and we had stopped the bounty hunting business after my parents retired and moved to Tobago to live. I got married to a beautiful woman named Onika, and we had a beautiful daughter, Rebecca. Every morning, I held my 7-year-old hand and walked her to the end of the street to wait for the school bus. As we saw the bus coming up the street, I gave her a hug, told her I loved her, and to have a great day at the school. The school bus stopped in front of us and the doors slid open. Rebecca waved at me.
Bye, Daddy.
As she got on, I looked up to smile at the bus driver, Rosie, and the blood drained from my face. In the seat where Rosie sat for the past 2 years, sat Miranda. I attempted to dive into the bus, but the doors closed and I bounced off them. As the bus pulled off, I noticed Rebecca by the window, and next to her was Miranda's grandmother. Open the door! Open the door! I screamed as I slammed the palm of my hand against the bus as I ran alongside it. The bus sped off, leaving me in the middle of the road. I placed my hands on my head and sank to my knees. No!
Professor McGuire said that if I aced this last test, I would be at the top of the class for this semester.
Derek, my older brother, mentioned before shoveling food into his mouth. I looked over at my brother with a critical eye. His left eye always had a slight twitch whenever he was lying. I wondered what he was hiding from Mom and Dad. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door.
Keisha, are you expecting someone?
Mom looked at me over her glasses.
You know I don't like it when company disturbs dinner.
I rolled my eyes. I'm not expecting anyone, Mom.
Sorry, Mom, it's me.
Derek wiped his mouth and stood up.
Craig had to drop off some papers for me that Professor McGuire needs.
Mom nodded, and Derek went to answer the door. A few minutes later, Derek returned. So, what type of papers did Craig need to drop off at this hour? I smirked in Derek's direction.
Nothing that concerns a high school student.
Derek responded, annoyed. We'll see about that, I mumbled, as I gulped down the last of my juice.
Who wants dessert?
Dad chimed in.
I made my famous apple pie. Me!
Derek and I shouted together. We looked at each other before we doubled over in laughter. As Dad and Derek went to the kitchen to organize dessert, I excused myself from the table and told Mom I needed to use the bathroom. I snuck into Derek's room. My eyes widened when I realized what Craig dropped off for him. Hi, my name is Keisha. Like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to tap that notification bell. If you do, you may get your favorite dessert tonight. As my parents and I walked onto Derek's college campus, I couldn't help but smile, hoping that by coming unannounced, we would catch him in something unethical. You see, Derek and I were complete opposites. He has always been my parents' perfect child. Straight A's, always does what he's told, and just an all-around goody two-shoes. He also had a gorgeous girlfriend, Haley, who was actually pretty cool to hang with. I, on the other hand, would question everything, which usually got me into trouble with teachers, had my own sense of fashion, and well, pretty much did what I wanted. I don't even think my parents expected me to go to college. When we got to his dorm room, one of his roommates opened the door.
Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Corrington. How are you?
Luke smiled.
Hi, Luke.
Dad gave him a firm handshake.
Is Derek around?
The guys looked at each other before Luke replied.
He had to do a philosophy makeup exam with Professor McGuire.
I raised my eyebrows suspiciously. Classes on a Saturday?
It's a special class.
Luke shot a look at me. Mom, are you guys really believing the story? These guys can't lie to save their lives.
Oh, Kesha, stop it.
Dad looked at me sternly.
Well, let him know that we dropped by.
Mom said as she handed them a basket of baked goods.
See, I told you we should have called first.
Mom whispered to Dad as they left the room. My parents may have bought that lame excuse, but I didn't. Whatever Derek is hiding, I am going to find out what it is. Bye, guys. Luke smiled at me.
Maybe if you weren't such a problematic child, your parents may believe you once in a while.
Luke closed the door on my face. How dare he? I fumed as I ran to catch up with my parents. I'll find out what Derek is up to. As we were exiting the campus, Derek called out behind us.
Mom, Dad, wait up.
As he approached us, I asked, "How was your exam with Professor McGuire?"
What?
A confused look washed over Derek's face.
Don't bombard Derek with your silly questions.
Mom said as she kissed him on the cheek.
Let's get some lunch.
Dad patted Derek's back fondly.
After that exam, you must have worked up an appetite.
The three of them walked up front having their own conversation as though I didn't exist. You would think that I'd be used to it by now, but it still makes my blood boil. My parents always hung on to every word that Derek spoke, but never listened to anything I had to say. We had lunch and I used my phone as I appeared to be invisible to my family. After lunch, Mom asked Derek if he was coming to Thanksgiving dinner, and he said yes. We said our goodbyes and we headed home.
Professor McGuire said that if I aced this last test, I would be at the top of the class for this semester.
Derek, my older brother, mentioned before shoveling food into his mouth. I looked over at my brother with a critical eye. His left eye always had a slight twitch whenever he was lying. I wondered what he was hiding from Mom and Dad. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door.
Keisha, are you expecting someone?
Mom looked at me over her glasses.
You know I don't like it when company disturbs dinner.
I rolled my eyes. I'm not expecting anyone, Mom.
Sorry, Mom, it's me.
Derek wiped his mouth and stood up.
Craig had to drop off some papers for me that Professor McGuire needs.
Mom nodded, and Derek went to answer the door. A few minutes later, Derek returned. So, what type of papers did Craig need to drop off at this hour? I smirked in Derek's direction.
Nothing that concerns a high school student.
Derek responded, annoyed. We'll see about that, I mumbled, as I gulped down the last of my juice.
Who wants dessert?
Dad chimed in.
I made my famous apple pie.
Me!
Derek and I shouted together. We looked at each other before we doubled over in laughter. As Dad and Derek went to the kitchen to organize dessert, I excused myself from the table and told Mom I needed to use the bathroom. I snuck into Derek's room. My eyes widened when I realized what Craig dropped off for him. On Derek's bed was a large envelope of transcripts. As I flipped through them, I heard the door close behind me. I spun around and there stood Derek. He rushed over and snatched the papers from my hand. Why do you have fake transcripts? I looked at Derek as I tapped my foot lightly.
Look, it's nothing you need to worry about, okay?
I wonder if Mom and Dad need to be worried. He froze.
You can't tell Mom and Dad.
I laughed. Can't? Oh, I'm telling. I walked towards the bedroom door, but Derek blocked me. He explained that he dropped out of college about a year ago, and he has been living off the checks Mom and Dad had been sending him for tuition. His friend's uncle already has a job lined up for him after college. That's why he needed the transcripts.
I'm tired of being the perfect son. I'm tired of being perfect for the both of us. Do you know how frustrating that is? I want to live my own life. You know I can't tell Mom about this. She already has a heart complication, and I don't want to make it worse.
You feel frustrated? Do you know how it feels to constantly live in your shadow, never being good enough for Mom or Dad? The only time they ever see me is when I do something they disapprove of. I'm sorry that you feel that you need to be perfect, bro, but I guess you'll have to be the perfect child for a bit longer. I want 15% of your paycheck, or I'm not only telling Mom, but I'll be paying a visit to your boss to let him know that you never graduated from college. Before Derek could respond, I walked out of his room with a smirk on my face. Derek and I went back to the table and pretended that nothing happened between us. Over the next few months, I helped Derek with his charade of pretending to be in college. On the day of his graduation, I faked being sick so we could all miss his graduation service. I was kept overnight for observation, and Derek spent the night with me and told our parents to go home and get some rest. Once Derek officially graduated, he started his job, and I collected 15% of his paycheck every month. Things were going great until the following Thanksgiving. Mom, Dad, Derek, and I were once again sitting around the table for Thanksgiving dinner when there was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and there stood Auntie Patricia. "Hey y'all, it's Auntie Pat," I yelled to the others in the dining room as I hugged her. Auntie Pat was the black sheep of the family. Whether she was invited or not, she showed up and usually brought some type of drama along the way.
Keisha, how are you, baby girl? I hope you are getting ready for college.
"I'm doing the best that I can, Auntie," I smiled and followed her to the dining room where she greeted everyone.
Pat, you aren't welcome here,
Mom said dryly.
Last time I checked, our parents also left me the house, Miriam. I'm here, get over it.
She's family, and I think she should be allowed to stay. I folded my arms.
When you have your own house, you can have her by you. But until then, she isn't allowed here no matter if half the house is technically hers.
Honey,
Dad looked embarrassed.
it's Thanksgiving. You can make an exception.
Fine, if she stays, then I go.
Auntie Pat sat by the table and began to pile food on a plate. Mom pushed her chair back and walked out of the room.
It's nice to see you, Pat.
Dad smiled before he followed Mom out of the room. Derek and I stayed with Aunt Pat as we updated her on what was going on in our lives. Somewhere along the line, Derek let it slip that he and Haley eloped. "Mom is going to have a fit when she hears this," I gasped. "Oh, Mom," I said playfully.
Kesha, you know how Mom is, and I don't want you to upset her given her heart condition and all.
"Especially with everything else that you've been hiding." I batted my eyes at Derek.
Who told you your mom had a heart problem?
Auntie Pat asked with a raised eyebrow.
And why have you been hiding Derek?
Derek, consumed by the new information about Mom, ignored Auntie Pat's last question.
Mom did. When she went to hospital during my piano recital when I was 12.
Derek looked at me, then at Auntie Pat.
Boy, the doctor told your mother that she was having an anxiety attack.
Auntie Pat laughed.
It's just like Miriam to manipulate people to get them to do what she wants.
Derek stormed out of the room and into the living room where Mom and Dad were watching television. Auntie Pat and I followed.
Mom, do you have a heart condition?
You know I do. Where is this coming from?
Mom, if you've never been honest about anything else, please be honest now. Do you have a heart problem?
I chimed in. Auntie Pat said. Mom glared at her sister.
This is why you aren't invited over. You are always starting trouble. Telling the truth, you mean?
Auntie Pat asked before biting into the drumstick in her hand.
Just tell him the truth, Miriam.
What is she talking about, Miriam?
Dad asked, looking quite confused about the entire situation. Mom sighed.
Fine.
She stood up and looked at everyone.
I don't have heart complications. Is everyone happy now?
Mom threw her hands up in the air. I watched as the shock of what Mom had said turned to hurt on Dad's face.
So, what have you been taking all these years?
Vitamins.
Dad shook his head and turned towards the window.
I can't believe I pretended to be a perfect son. I guess we're a family of frauds.
Derek yelled. He told Mom and Dad about how he had dropped out of college, about his new job, how he and his girlfriend had eloped, and she was 4 months pregnant. Then he turned to me.
And you, my own sister, who I thought would have my back, blackmailed me. I am so done with this family. I don't want to see any of you again.
With that, Derek left and we never saw him again. The next few months, things got worse with Mom and Dad. When I finished high school, Dad left. Mom was devastated and went through a period of withdrawal, not talking and not eating. Even though I got into Penn State, I decided to go to a community college so I could look after Mom. I also took a job on afternoons and weekends to have some extra cash. After Dad left, I tried to contact Derek to apologize, but he refused my calls. I didn't have much of a social life in college, and one semester before exams, my friends insisted that I go to a party with them on my night off. I was reluctant to go because I wanted to spend the night with Mom, since she said she never sees me anymore and she feels trapped at home by herself. That night, I told Mom I had to work an extra shift. I felt bad lying to Mom, but I needed to de-stress. She said okay, went to her room, and locked the door. By the time my friends and I got to the club, the party was in full swing. I was having a great time and thanked my friends for dragging me out the house. That was until I saw her. The crowd was cheering and someone was dancing in the middle. My friends and I inched forward to see who the dancer was. My eyes widened when I realized it was my mother. "Mom!" I shouted as I spun her around to face me.
Hi, Keisha. I thought you were working tonight.
She fumbled. I can't believe I've been feeling sorry for you all this time, and here you are living your best life. I'm so done with this. I stormed off and exited the club, Mom close on my heels.
Keisha, honey, wait, please.
I stopped and rolled my eyes before turning to face her. What do you want, Mom? Are you going to tell me how sorry you are and that you need another chance? We're all out of chances, Mom. I'll be moving out tonight, and I'm going to live with Dad. I turned and walked away from Mom. I hope that one day she realizes that she has a problem and gets the help that she needs.
I was exhausted. It had been a really long day at school, and then I had stayed for football practice, so I really couldn't wait to get home. As I went around the corner, I could see my house in the distance, and I could almost smell my mom's cooking. I was starving. Suddenly, I heard the sound of tires screeching, and a car came hurtling down the street, heading straight towards me. I tried to jump out of the way, but it was going too fast. The next thing I knew, everything had gone black. But before I go on, you have subscribed, haven't you? And don't forget to hit the notification bell too. As I began to stir, I could feel my head was throbbing. I tried to open my eyes, but the glare from the lights above were too bright, so I closed them again.
Charlie, can you hear me?
I recognized my mom's voice. Yes, where am I? It was hard to get the words out, and when I did manage, my voice sounded weird.
You're in a hospital, darling. You've had an accident.
I blinked my eyes a couple of times and then opened them. Both of my parents were standing next to my bed. They had worried looks on their faces. There was a car.
Shh, darling, we know.
I tried to avoid it, but it was too fast.
Don't try to speak anymore. You have a broken jaw from the accident.
I looked at my mom in shock. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. Mirror.
I don't think that's a good idea, Charlie.
Please. My mom handed a mirror to me. When I looked into it, I got the shock of my life. I was hardly recognizable. My face was all bandaged up, and I could see that a number of my teeth were missing. But before I had a chance to say anything, the door opened and a tall, dark-haired man walked in.
Oh, thank goodness he's awake. I'm so sorry.
I looked at the man in surprise. I had no idea who he was or why he would be apologizing to me.
It was a complete accident. My foot got stuck on the accelerator. I tried to miss you, but it all happened too fast.
Charlie, this is the man that was driving the car that hit you.
I looked at the man in horror. Well, you would too, wouldn't you? I mean, he was responsible for ruining my face.
Don't worry, I'm going to pay for the best surgeon to fix your face. Money is no object. Whatever it takes, I will do it for you. You can't imagine how terrible I feel.
But his words didn't bring me any comfort. I knew that it would cost thousands and thousands of dollars for a top surgeon. No way he would want to pay that. But I was wrong. Turns out, the man that hit me was a millionaire. I suppose you might say I was lucky, but if you're gonna get hit by someone, it's better if that person is rich, isn't it? The man was true to his word. About a week later, I went in for the surgery. He paid for the best surgeon in the world to be flown in to perform the operation. Once my jaw had been fixed, he got a dentist to give me a new set of teeth. When it came for the day to remove all my bandages, I was a nervous wreck. What if the surgery hadn't worked? What if I still looked terrible? But I needn't have worried. When the nurse removed the bandage and gave me a mirror, I was so happy at what I saw. I looked so handsome. My smile was absolutely perfect. To be honest, I looked a lot better than I had before the accident. My mom and dad were so happy when they saw the results.
Oh, Charlie, you look wonderful. I think I'm going to cry.
Don't be silly, Mom. It's nothing to cry about. That afternoon, I was able to leave the hospital. When I got home, I went straight up to my room and just stood there staring at my reflection in the mirror. You are one handsome dude, Charlie. I couldn't wait to see all my friends at school. But when I got to school the next day, none of my friends even spoke to me. I thought that they would have all come running up to me to see how I was. But it was as if they didn't even know me. And do you know what else was really weird? Suddenly, all the cool girls started talking to me. They had never even looked my way before I had the accident, but now they all seemed to want to chat with me.
Hi there, I'm Katie. Hi, what's your name? I'm Julie.
I'm Charlie.
Are you new here?
No. I was getting more and more confused by the second. It seemed like they had no idea who I was. Am I really that unrecognizable? Maybe that's why my friends didn't speak to me. I went to find my best friend, Mike. Hey, Mike, how you doing? He turned and looked at me, a shocked look on his face.
Charlie?
Yes, of course it's me.
But you look so different. I mean, your voice is the same, so I know it's you, but your face.
I guess that's what happens when you get surgery from the best in the world. Once everyone else realized exactly who I was, they were all shocked too.
Wow, you look amazing. I would never have known it was you.
I just stood there, lapping up all the attention. It felt really good knowing that everyone thought I was so handsome. You're probably thinking that things couldn't have gotten any better, but you're wrong. You will not believe what happened to me next. It was the end of the week and I was walking home from school when I heard a car horn beeping from behind me. When I turned around, I saw it was the millionaire that had hit me. He was driving a bright red convertible sports car.
Charlie, hi.
Oh, hi there. Nice car.
I was hoping you would like it.
Why?
Because it's yours.
What? You're joking, aren't you? He just laughed.
No, I'm not joking. Jump in.
I got into the car and he drove me the rest of the way home.
I know I paid for your surgery, but it still didn't feel like enough. I did a terrible thing to you and I just wanted to do something to try and compensate for it.
But you didn't have to buy me a car.
I know I didn't, but I want to.
I knew that he was probably only giving me the car so I wouldn't sue him, but I didn't care. I had a shiny new sports car and I loved it. After that, my life completely changed. Once the girls at school saw my new car, they all wanted to go on a date with me. I could pick and choose whoever I wanted to date, and none of them ever said no. It got to the stage where I was dating a different girl every week. My life was completely perfect, but then something completely unexpected happened. I was walking down the street with the girl that I was dating that week, my arm linked through hers, when a girl I had never seen before came storming up to me and slapped me right across the face. As I put my hand on my stinging cheek, she started ranting at me.
How could you?
I looked at her in shock. Who are you? Her face suddenly looked hurt.
What do you mean, who am I? I'm your girlfriend. Well, actually, now I'm your ex-girlfriend.
The girl I was walking with pulled her arm away from me.
Is it true? Is she your girlfriend?
I just stood there in utter confusion. I had no idea what the girl was talking about. Both of the girls turned around and stormed off, leaving me standing there all alone. What was that all about? When I got home, I told my parents everything that had happened. Maybe the accident caused me to lose my memory or something.
Charlie, you didn't have a girlfriend. I have no idea who that girl was, or why she would say that to you. Maybe she mistook you for someone else?
Yeah, you're probably right, Mom. I decided I would try to forget all about my encounter with the girl. She was probably just some crazy girl, nothing for me to be concerned about. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? It was a couple of weeks later and I was walking down the street when suddenly I spotted the girl coming towards me on the other side of the street. I went to cross the road, but as soon as she saw me, she turned around and started running in the opposite direction. I had to know the truth, so I started chasing after her. I was bigger and faster than her, so it didn't take me long to catch up with her. Wait, stop, I just want to talk to you. She stood there gasping and panting for breath.
I've got nothing to say to you.
Is it true? Were you my girlfriend?
Are you telling me you don't remember?
I'm sorry, I must have lost some memories from the car accident. I really have no idea who you are. And also, I asked my parents. They said that I never had a girlfriend.
That's because they didn't know about me.
I didn't know what to believe. I mean, you would think that I would have some memory of her, wouldn't you? But what if she was telling the truth? I just had to know for certain. Okay, if you were my girlfriend, what's my favorite thing to eat? She smiled at me.
Oh, that's easy. Pickled onion sandwiches with brown sauce.
I looked at her in shock. Of course, she was completely spot on. And it's not as though she could have guessed it, right? Then she took some photos out of her bag.
These are us two together.
She handed the photos to me. She was right. There were loads of pictures of us, laughing and looking really happy together. But why didn't my parents know about you? She sighed.
We decided to keep it a secret as we knew that they wouldn't approve.
But why?
Charlie, I'm quite a bit older than you. They just wouldn't understand.
I don't even know your name.
It's Nina.
I smiled at her. Hi, Nina.
Hi.
Look, I'm so sorry for not being able to remember you, and I'm sorry you saw me with that girl. I would never have dated her if I had known you were my girlfriend. Can you forgive me? She hesitated for a minute, but then a smile spread across her face.
Yes, Charlie, I forgive you.
Do you think we could start over again?
I don't know, Charlie. You hurt me a lot.
I know I did. I'm really sorry. Well, do you think we could be friends?
Well, I guess that would be okay.
So would it be okay for two friends to go watch a movie together on Saturday night? She laughed.
Yes, I suppose that would be okay.
Great, it's a date.
No, Charlie, it's not a date.
Yeah, I know. With that, she turned and walked off.
See you Saturday.
I was so excited for the rest of the week. I couldn't wait for Saturday to arrive. Eventually, it was time for me to meet Nina. When I got to the cinema, she was already standing outside waiting. Sorry, have you been waiting long?
No, it's fine. I've only just got here.
Come on, let's get the tickets. As we sat watching the movie, I couldn't help but sneak a glance at her. She really was very pretty. I turned away and looked at the movie again.
Charlie?
You.
But why?
I was just thinking how pretty you are.
Charlie, I thought we agreed we would just be friends.
I know I said that, but now that I'm with you, I can't help wanting more. Please, give me a chance to make it up to you. I sat there holding my breath, waiting for her answer. My heart sank as she started shaking her head.
I hope I'm not going to regret this. Okay, Charlie, we can give it another go.
Yes! Shh! Everyone in the cinema turned to look at me, but I didn't care. I was so happy. I wanted to tell the whole world about it. After that, we were inseparable. At first, Nina still wanted to keep it our secret.
Just until we know for sure that we are meant for each other.
Reluctantly, I agreed. Okay, as soon as we are serious, I'm telling my parents.
Okay, as soon as we agree that we are serious.
It didn't take more than a couple of months for both of us to realize that we had met the one. It's time to tell my parents now, Nina.
I know, I'm just so nervous. What if they don't like me?
Of course they will like you. Who wouldn't? But when I told my parents, they weren't exactly thrilled about it.
But she is so much older than you, Charlie. Are you sure you wouldn't rather go out with someone your own age?
I love her, Mom.
I'm sure you think you do. But I think it would be better if you found someone more suitable.
I don't care what you say. She is the perfect girl for me. I know she's a bit older than me, but we get on so well. We both like the same things, and she's so funny. We laugh all the time. My mom could see that there was no way I was going to back down, so she turned to my dad.
I suppose that wouldn't harm us to meet the girl. If Charlie is really that keen on her, we should give her a chance.
Thank you, Mom. You're going to love her.
Well, we will see, Charlie, but invite her around for dinner on Friday night, and we'll get to know her.
When I told Nina that my parents wanted her to come for dinner, she was really nervous.
What if I say something stupid?
Just be yourself. I know they're going to love you. And I was right. At first, my parents were a bit frosty towards Nina, but once she started chatting to them, and they could see how happy we were, they soon came around.
Okay, Charlie, you have our blessing. We can see how happy Nina makes you, so we are happy for you two to date.
I wanted to stand up and dance. My life had been turned inside out and upside down because of that car accident, and I had lost my memories of Nina. But now everything is as it should be. And on top of that, I have a perfect smile and a sports car. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. As I walked through the restaurant, something I saw stopped me in my tracks. Wait a minute, that's weird. That girl looks exactly like my girlfriend Stella. But it can't be, she's kissing some guy. Just at that second, the girl stopped kissing him and turned around. My heart almost stopped beating. It was Stella. Oh my God, you're cheating on me! Stella instantly looked guilty.
Robbie, what are you doing here?
You told me you were spending the evening with your friends, but instead you're kissing him?
It's not what you think.
Oh, this had better be good. Go on then, try and explain yourself.
It didn't mean anything. I'm sorry. You can forgive me, can't you?
Forgive you? Forgive you? Are you kidding me right now? I never want to see you again.
Please don't say that. I'm sorry. Really, I am.
You're a cheat and a liar, Stella. I can't believe I ever trusted you.
It was a mistake, Robbie. Please give me a second chance. I promise I'll never do anything like this again.
You make me sick. I wouldn't date you again if you were the last girl on Earth. You were welcome to her, mate. I stormed out of the restaurant without a backward glance. I could hear Stella calling my name, but I just ignored her. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Then I guarantee you will get your perfect partner too. I was so sad after Stella and I broke up. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to see my friends. In fact, all I did was lock myself in my room and cry. My mom tried to get me to go out, but I wouldn't listen to her.
Come on, Robbie. You need to go out with your friends. I'm sure you will meet the perfect girl for you soon enough.
I'm telling you, Mom, the perfect girl isn't out there. As the days went by, I began to think more and more about what I had said to my mom. It was true, there was no perfect girl out there. That's when I came up with my idea. I don't know why I'd never thought of it before. I decided that I would make my own perfect girlfriend. I knew it wouldn't be that difficult for me after all. I am a scientific engineer. But it still took me quite a long time to get everything right. It took me about 2 hours just to decide what color hair she should have. I mean, of course I like blondes, but brunettes are cute too. She had to be tall, but not too tall. Slim, but still have some curves. I hadn't realized just how difficult designing the perfect girlfriend would be. But eventually, she was finished and she looked completely realistic. No one will think that you're a robot. You look just like any normal girl. I'm going to call you Ava, like from the movie Ex Machina.
Ava. Ava. Yes, I like my name.
Well, so you should. It's a beautiful name, just like you.
Oh, Robbie, you're so cute.
The next thing I had to do was introduce her to all my friends. I'd been invited to a birthday party, and I knew that would be the perfect time for her to meet everyone. When I walked into the party with Ava, everyone stopped and stared. Hi, this is Ava, my new girlfriend.
Hi, Ava. I'm Jenny. Gosh, your hair is so nice. Which salon do you go to?
Oh, thanks. I'm not sure. You know, one of the ones in town.
Jenny was about to ask Ava more, but luckily Donna came over and introduced herself.
Hi, I'm Donna. You're so pretty. I love your dress.
Thank you. You look lovely too.
I was really pleased with the way Ava had handled chatting to the girls. I could tell that they had no clue she wasn't a real girl. Ava's motherboard was working excellently. All the girls loved Ava, and the guys thought she was pretty cute too.
Hey, Robbie, you lucky man. Where did you meet her?
Oh, I just kind of bumped into her at work.
Are there any more like her hanging around there?
I was really happy that everyone loved Ava. I'd been a bit nervous in case any of my friends realized she was a robot. But Ava acted exactly like a human. No one suspected a thing. But the next thing I had to do was introduce her to my parents. I knew that wouldn't be so easy. My mom always scrutinized any girl I brought home. She would definitely be asking Ava a lot of questions, so we needed to get our story straight. Before I took Ava home, I told her every last detail of our supposed first meeting, right down to what clothes we were both wearing and what exactly was said. It's a good thing I did because when my parents met Ava, my mom started in on her immediately.
So, how long have you known Robbie?
About 2 weeks.
Where did you meet?
Oh, I was walking along the street close to where Robbie works, and we just kind of bumped into each other.
Ava looked across at me and smiled.
That was the best day of my life.
I smiled back at her and nodded. I couldn't believe she was handling Mom's questions so well.
So, if the day was so special, you must remember what you were wearing.
Okay, Mom, give Ava a chance, can't you? She's not under interrogation.
I'm not interrogating her, Robbie. I'm just trying to get to know her.
I could tell that my parents were a bit suspicious of her, and when I overheard them chatting in the kitchen, I knew for sure.
I'm not sure about that girl. There's something not quite right about her.
What do you mean?
I can't put my finger on it. Call it a mother's instinct, I don't know. But something is going on.
Just give the girl a chance. She's probably just a bit nervous about meeting us.
Okay, I will.
My parents came back to the lounge.
Come on, dinner is ready. I hope you like spaghetti bolognese, Ava.
Yes, I love it, thank you.
We sat down at the table and began to eat, but what happened next nearly ruined everything. My dad was reaching across the table to get the pepper shaker when all of a sudden he knocked a glass of water all over Ava. Sparks started flying out of Ava. She'd short-circuited. I watched in dismay as she fainted and her head fell face first into her plate of spaghetti. My mom started screaming and my dad jumped up. It's okay, leave her to me, she'll be fine.
She's not okay, look at her.
She's probably just tired.
But what about all those sparks? What was all that about?
What sparks? I didn't see any sparks. You must have misseen.
Robbie, this is no time to mess around. We need to take Ava to the hospital.
No way.
But there might be something seriously wrong with her. She needs to see a doctor.
I'm telling you, she's just tired. She'll be fine after a good night's sleep.
Robbie, you can see that she's not fine. What's going on here?
There's nothing going on.
I am not going to ask you again. I demand an explanation.
I could see by my mom's face that she wasn't going to let it go. So even though I didn't want to, I told them all about Ava. As my story began to unfold, my parents' faces started to look more and more shocked.
Robbie, why would you do such a thing?
Because I wanted the perfect girlfriend.
But there are lots of nice girls. You just have to get out there and try and meet one.
But real girls just lie and cheat.
Not all girls. Somewhere out there is the perfect girl for you.
But I have the perfect girl. I have Ava.
But she isn't real.
Well, she is to me. My parents went on and on at me, trying to convince me that I should meet a real girl, but I didn't listen to them. I don't care what you two say. Ava is my girlfriend. You might not like it, but you're just going to have to accept it. Eventually, they came round to my way of thinking.
Okay, Robbie. If it's what you really want, then we will accept it.
It is what I want, and you two have to promise you won't tell anyone that she's a robot, okay? My parents sighed, but both of them agreed.
Okay, we promise.
I picked Ava up and carried her to my room. It took me a good few hours to repair her, but eventually, she was looking perfect again. For a while after that, everything was normal. Ava was the perfect girlfriend. All of my friends were jealous of my relationship.
I wish I could find a girlfriend like Ava. She's so funny, she's cute. I'd even go as far to say she is perfect.
I know, right? And she chose me. How lucky am I? But little did I know that my luck was about to run out. It was about a week later. We had been invited over to my friend's house for a party. But when we arrived, I got the shock of my life. It was a pool party. I started to feel really worried. I mean, you would too, wouldn't you? Ava in a swimming pool was not going to be a good combination. I tried to keep Ava away from the pool as much as I could, but all the girls were trying to get her to go in.
Come on, Ava, come and join us. Yeah, it's so warm in here. What are you waiting for?
Oh, sorry, we didn't know it was a pool party. Ava doesn't have a swimsuit.
That's okay. I have a spare with me. You can borrow that, Ava.
Maybe later. We're just gonna grab a drink first. I pulled Ava away from the pool. You wait here, I'm gonna get us some drinks.
Okay, Robbie.
I had just started pouring Coke into a glass when I heard something that made my blood turn cold. It was Ava screaming. I ran outside, but I was too late. A couple of guys had picked Ava up and thrown her into the pool. I stood there and watched as sparks shot out of Ava's body. The girl started screaming as Ava short-circuited and died.
Oh my God! What's happening to Ava?
Quick, someone help her! Get her out of the pool! Wait, what's that? I can see something sticking out of her body.
What is it?
I don't know. It kind of looks like a wire.
Oh God, don't tell me Ava
Is a what? I think Ava might be a robot.
The blood literally drained from my face. I felt like my whole world had just come crashing down.
Robbie, is that true? Is Ava a robot? Did you make your own girlfriend?
Everyone stopped what they were doing and just stared at me. Some of them looked at me with pity while others were trying not to laugh. But I didn't care what they thought. All I was bothered about was saving Ava. I jumped into the pool and pulled Ava out.
Don't tell me you're gonna try fix her. We all know she's a robot now.
Get out of my way.
You're crazy. Why don't you find yourself a real girlfriend?
What, so they can just cheat on me like Stella did?
Not every girl is a cheat, Robbie. You'll find someone nice one day.
I already have someone nice. I have Ava, and she's perfect.
But she's not real.
She's real to me. I picked Ava up and left the party. When I got home, I went straight to my room and started working on her. The first thing I managed to repair was her voice.
Yelled up the stairs.
The photographer is set.
I picked up Fluffy and stroked his fur as I walked down the stairs to the living room. Every year, my family took a Christmas photo and created Christmas cards to send to family and friends. Yeah, I know it's old school, but we love it. Mom and Dad stood behind Joel, my 13-year-old brother, and we sat on stools while Fluffy lay lazily on my lap. As the photographer stood behind the camera, I couldn't help but feel lucky to have such a perfect family.
Everyone say cheese.
Cheese! My family smiled simultaneously into the camera. Little did I know that Christmas photo was the last photo we ever took out as a perfect family. Hey, my name is Mandy. Before we head back to my story, like this video, and of course, subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you can hear more crazy stories like mine. Now, back to the story.
How about we get a 10-foot tall tree this year?
Joel smiled broadly as we sat around the breakfast table.
Don't you think that's a bit much?
Dad looked at him with a raised eyebrow. But Dad, it's Christmas. What better season than to add a little extra? My eyes twinkled as I helped Mom cut out the cookies from the dough.
She does have a point there, Phil.
Mom added. Before I could comment, the doorbell rang. I excused myself and answered it with Fluffy at my heels. I opened the door, and a slender woman with brown hair in a business suit was looking back at me.
Good morning.
She smiled politely.
Can you tell me if Mrs. Archer is in?
Hold on 1 second. I closed the door and quickly called Mom and told her someone was at the door for her. I watched as Mom opened the door. Was it my imagination, or did she look a bit shocked before composing herself quickly? Mom stepped outside and closed the door behind her while I went back to the kitchen to put the cookies in the oven. Who was that? I looked at Mom when she re-entered the kitchen a few minutes later.
Oh, just another person looking for a donation at this time of year.
Mom waved it off.
As soon as these cookies are finished, we will go to that 10-foot tree.
Monday morning, Joel and I arrived just as the school bell rang. I told Joel I would meet him later and hustled to my first class. During our first period, the principal, Mr. Orson, said that the theater arts teacher, Mrs. Hall, got into an accident over the weekend. He said that they have hired a substitute teacher, Mrs. Sullivan, to help with the Christmas production. She and Mrs. Hall's assistant, Mr. Jackson, will work together to make sure that the Christmas play will be successful. After the announcement, the class buzzed with anxiety as we wondered if Mrs. Hall was going to be okay. After school, I met Joel in the school's auditorium to help with the props. We stayed for 2 hours before heading home. As we were walking out of the schoolyard, I noticed her, the mystery woman that had knocked on our door over the weekend. She was chatting with another teacher. I shrugged it off and followed Joel out of the school's gates. During dinner, every night my family always discussed how our day went. When it was my turn, I told my mother about Mrs. Hall and the substitute teacher. I also mentioned that I saw the same woman at school that was at the house a few days ago. Dad shot Mom a worried look. Dad changed the conversation, and as soon as we finished dinner, Mom suggested that we sing carols. After singing carols, we told our parents goodnight, and I went to Joel's room and closed the door behind me. Did you notice Mom's reaction when I told her about the woman at school?
Who was she?
I don't know, but I bet Mom and Dad know who she is. All I know is that she's the same woman that Mom said wanted a donation a few days ago. We need to find out who she is.
Do you think it's that serious?
Joel looked at me curiously. I nodded. If it affects Mom and Dad, I think it is. Before we went to bed, Joel and I agreed that we would get to the bottom of it. Before setting up props the next afternoon in the auditorium, Mr. Jackson introduced me to the mystery woman who was indeed Mrs. Sullivan.
Hi, nice to meet you. And thank you for helping out on set.
Mrs. Sullivan extended her hand and I shook it.
How is life at home? Is everything okay at home?
I tilted my head to the side and looked at Mrs. Sullivan curiously as I wondered why she would even think to ask me a question like that. Everything is great at home. My family and I share a special bond and my home life is quite happy. I think I should get back to working on props. I smiled and turned to walk away, but Mrs. Sullivan grabbed my wrist, her eyes narrowed.
Your family is not what it seems.
I pulled away my arm and walked out of the auditorium. What did she mean? Mom! Dad! I yelled as soon as I walked into the house.
Mom and Dad decided to get an early head start to Christmas shopping this year.
Joel announced as he casually walked down the stairs. I quickly told him about the events that occurred in the auditorium.
Something is definitely up.
Joel stroked his chin thoughtfully. Things are getting way too weird. Let's search the office quickly before they come back. We may find a clue as to who this mystery woman might be. After about 30 minutes, Joel looked at me.
Nothing. I don't think this is such a good idea. I mean, Mom and Dad never lied to us before.
I was almost ready to agree with him when my eyes lit up. We've just been looking in the wrong place. I walked over to the family painting on the wall and removed it to reveal a safe. Joel's jaw dropped.
How did you know about this?
I have my ways. I winked at him. Truth is, I seen my mom opening it one night when she thought I was already asleep. Now we need to find the correct combination. We tried a series of different combinations. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, but nothing. Time was running out and we needed to get into the safe.
How about 5062006?
I looked at him weirdly, but tried it anyway. When the safe beeped, we beamed at each other. We quickly pulled out the documents from the safe and searched them. When I came across my family birth certificates, I didn't think too much of it. Until I realized there were 6 and not 4. I quickly took a photo of the extra 2 papers.
Mandy, Joe, we're home.
Mom's voice called. Joel and I quickly threw the papers back into the safe and closed the door. When I replaced the painting, I noticed the combination code neatly signed at the bottom of the painting. We walked out of the office and inhaled deeply. We calmly walked down the stairs and met our parents. That evening, we made gingerbread houses, and it almost seemed like everything was okay. Until later that night.
Mandy, wake up!
Mom shook me hysterically. I opened my eyes groggily and pushed myself into a sitting position. What's wrong, Mom?
Joel is missing!
I jumped out of bed and ran to Joel's room. I looked around Joel's room in horror. Things were thrown all over the room and his window was broken. But what made me feel sick to my stomach was the red writing on the wall that read, "Your family is not what it seems." Mom took me gently by the shoulders and steered me downstairs towards the kitchen. Dad was sitting by the table with his head in his hands. With tears streaming down my face, I asked my parents who Mrs. Sullivan was. Mom insisted that she wasn't anyone we should be worried about, but Dad looked at me, his eyes apologetic. Just as Dad was about to speak, the doorbell rang.
That must be the officers. You stay here, Mandy.
Mom kissed me on the cheek and she and Dad went to the front door. Joel was missing and they were still lying. A few minutes later, my parents walked back into the kitchen. "Who is Mrs. Sullivan?" I asked sternly. When neither of them answered, I stood up and threw a kitchen chair across the room. "Joel is missing. Who is Mrs. Sullivan? We found birth certificates tonight. One of a girl older than I am and one of a boy the same age as Joel. Who is Mrs. Sullivan?" I yelled. Dad cleared his throat. His eyes were red and swollen with tears.
Have a seat, Mandy.
Dad waited for me to sit before he and Mom sat opposite me.
Mrs. Sullivan's real name is Marissa Archer. She's our daughter. When she was 16, her boyfriend got into a motorcycle accident, and a few weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. She had a mental breakdown after the baby and was in a mental institution.
I don't remember having a sister, but what does this have to do with Joel?
Joel is the baby. When we had to send Marissa away, we decided to take you kids away from all the small town gossip. We still visited Mandy every weekend. The doctor said that she would never live a normal life and she would always need medication. We didn't want Joel growing up in that type of environment. Marissa was 14 when you were born. The doctors told us that after Marissa, we wouldn't be able to have any other children. Then you came along and we had Joel to take care of. So we thought the best thing to do would be to make you both think that you were siblings and not aunt and nephew.
I shook my head in disgust and got up from the table. You should have told us. You should have told us! I banged the kitchen table and ran into my room crying. The house was chaotic the next 2 days as police continued to come in and out as they searched Joel's room for clues. By the third day, I needed to get out for some fresh air. I pulled on some clothes and walked out of the house. The cool night air felt good against my skin. I walked for a few minutes, and when I looked up, I realized I was standing at the front of the school. I walked into the gates into the auditorium. I noticed Mr. Jackson's car was still there and figured he was doing some last-minute preparations for the school play. I walked into the auditorium and it was empty. I sat in the front row thinking about all the times Joel and I either helped with stage props or acted in the plays at the school. I closed my eyes. Thump, thump. My eyes shot open and I darted around. Hello? Is anyone there? Silence. Then a few seconds later, the thumping resumed. Hello? I said louder. This time the thumping grew more intense. I followed the sound to the back of the stage. Below the stage was the storage area where we kept different props when they were not in use. The door to the storage area was slightly opened. I walked cautiously inside and allowed my eyes to grow accustomed to the dark. In a corner, I noticed someone sitting on a chair. I ran to the lights and flicked it on. My heart raced when I realized that it was Joel. I ran to him and removed the gag from his mouth before removing the ropes from his legs and hands. I'm so happy you're safe.
Mrs. Sullivan said if I made any noise that she was going to hurt the students and teachers at the school. But when I realized that everyone had left for the night, then I heard your voice. I knew it was safe.
Just then, a shadow fell on the doorway. I looked up and saw Mr. Jackson. Joel froze, but I welcomed the help. Mr. Jackson, can you please call the police and tell them that we found my brother? Mr. Jackson swung a bat casually in his hands.
And why would I do that, Miss Archer? My wife has been looking for her son for quite some time after your mother decided to steal him from her.
With trembling hands, I quickly removed the ropes and shielded Joel behind me. I slowly removed my phone from my back pocket and slipped it into Joel's hands. We looked at Mr. Jackson as he moved slowly around the room. I moved slowly with Joel still behind me until we were close to the door. Suddenly I yelled, "Run, Joel, and call for help!" before I threw all my weight into Mr. Jackson's body. Mr. Jackson grunted as he fell to the ground. I watched as Joel bolted out of the room as I scrambled to my feet. Mr. Jackson grabbed a hold of one of my legs and dragged me towards him. I kicked and screamed loudly as I grasped for anything that I could use as a weapon. Finally, my fingers held on to 2 feet of steel pipe. I swung it at Mr. Jackson, who was now hovering over me, and it made contact to the side of his head. I took those few seconds he was dazed to run out of the room. When I ran outside, I saw Joel talking to 2 teachers who were returning to drop off an extra prop. They told us to stay in the parking lot until the police arrived, while they secured Mr. Jackson. They ran towards the auditorium, and Joel and I held each other tight. Later that night, when the police dropped us home, Joel asked Mom and Dad why Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Jackson kidnapped him. They said that last year they lost a son that looked just like him. They said that she was a very sick woman and that he shouldn't worry about her anymore. Joel seemed to accept that answer, and I decided to let it slide. We decided as a family to spend the holidays away from the home. Since the police had still not found Mrs. Sullivan, we eventually decided to pack up and leave our home, just in case Mrs. Sullivan decided to return. 2 years have now passed, and my brother still doesn't know the real reason why he was kidnapped, and Mrs. Sullivan, or should I say Marissa, still has not been caught. Should I tell Joel the truth? Or should I respect my parents' wishes to keep it a secret from him? Tell me what you think in the comments below.
Run, run! I heard Toby yell from the next aisle. He'd been caught by a security guard. It was a good distraction for me because I had already stolen everything we needed for that night. While everyone else was occupied with Toby, I ran outside and all the way to his small house in the projects. This is where our gang hung out. Yes, I was part of a gang, but I'll tell you more about that later. Before I continue, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you don't miss out on any more stories by hitting that notification bell too. Thanks, you're the best. Toby had been my best friend since we were in preschool. Our grandmas went to the same church, so we met in Sunday school. We had a lot in common. For example, we lived alone with our grandmas. When Toby was 12, his grandma passed away, but he didn't want to go into foster care. So he ran away from the officials whenever they tried to find him. Later, he ended up joining a gang because the guys on the block treated him like family. He dropped out of school and started doing things that no kid should be doing, really. The gang became like his family, and they were practically raising themselves. They all liked to hang out at his house because no one was there to see what was going on. There were no nosy adults. Instead of trying to change Toby's mind or helping him to do something different, I ended up being sucked into that same gang too. Over time, we became very skilled at the worst things. We could steal anything without being caught. Our gang leaders were already in their 20s, and they were involved in more horrible things, which they promised to teach us when we were adults. We were already 17 years old, but they were convinced it was still too early. That night, after I ran away from the supermarket, I waited a few minutes for Toby because I knew he'd show up, and he did. Whoa, that was close, he said as he barged through the door. Yeah, you escaped again though. Here, have a drink. I smiled, handing him a bottle of the grape soda I had stolen. You should probably go home, you have school tomorrow, he said. Yeah, you're right. Although Toby had dropped out of school, I stayed, and he always tried to encourage me to do the right thing. Besides, my grandma would never let me drop out, and I didn't want to be in a gang forever. I had dreams. I wanted to become a kindergarten teacher someday. Most people laughed when I said that because I didn't fit the description at all. I dressed like a tomboy most days. Huge t-shirts, baggy jeans, the coolest kicks, and lots of chains. I swore more than a sailor. But who says tomboys can't be teachers? Anyway, I took Toby's advice and went home. My grandma was already sleeping because it was quite late. The next day, I was extremely happy for no reason. I took the bus to school and smiled at everyone. They looked at me like I was weird. My first class was art. I sat down in my usual spot at the back and waited for Mrs. Harper to walk in. She was the only teacher I got along with at school. Everyone was in class already. Then the door opened, and they all went silent. I looked behind me and saw the boy I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. He was so cute. Oh my God, I thought. I waved at him. Hey, are you new here? Sit by me, I said while pushing the person next to me out of their seat. Hi, yeah. It's my first day here, he replied. He looked startled, but he sat next to me. He was short, probably 5'1", had short brown hair and the nerdiest glasses I'd ever seen in my life. They were almost bigger than his face. He was also kind of skinny, and you're probably thinking that this makes no sense, especially after I told you a bit about my personality. But yes, I'm a tomboy who is fatally attracted to nerds, and I had the biggest one I'd ever seen sitting next to me. Why do you go to this school now? I asked. Well, I live with my aunt and she got a new job here, so we had to move. I also heard that the school has a pretty great robotics team. I can't wait to try it out, he said, still sounding a bit scared. Oh my god, he loves nerdy stuff too? I'm in love, I thought to myself. Hey, Patricia found herself a new nerd, said Todd, the class clown. Everyone burst out laughing. Shut up, he is not a nerd. He is awesome, I screamed while staring into his eyes. We had different classes after, but later that day, I found him sitting alone in the cafeteria. I took my tray and sat right next to him. He looked scared again. Look, I'm not a bully or anything. I'm not gonna knock your tray over. Stop acting so scared of me. I'm just trying to help you out on your first day. I laughed. He smiled back and bit a piece of his apple. His teeth were so tiny and cute. I chuckled. Cool. My name is Thomas, by the way, he said. Nice to meet you. I'm Patricia, I replied. The next few weeks went pretty much the same. I followed Thomas around whenever I could. I even joined the robotics club just so I could be around him. We became better friends and he started to open up to me. But I couldn't tell whether or not he was interested in me romantically. It's time to step up my game. But I don't know what to do, I said to Toby one night while we were at his house. The next day I explained to Thomas that I needed help with my math homework because I didn't understand a thing. Sure, I can meet you in the library after school, he said. I don't like the library, I said. What about your house? He said. My dad will kill you, I replied. Okay, well, my house then. He finally decided. My gosh, did he take forever to take a hint? He waited for me after school and we went to his house, which was in a nice area in the suburbs. His house was quite cute too. His aunt wasn't at home, so we had the place to ourselves. We went to the dining room and he began to help me understand a concept, which I already understood. It was fun pretending I was stupid. This continued for a few days and I realized that I was a really good actor. Now, although I am a tomboy, I always expect the guy to make the first move, and he just wasn't doing that. I was confused. Here I was, at his house, making my desires quite obvious, but he just wasn't taking a hint. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. Thomas, I like you, and I think we should go on a date, I said. What? He replied. Don't you get it? I pretended to be confused just so I could spend extra time with you, and although you're so smart, you never bothered to realize that. I nearly screamed. I don't really see you in that way, Patricia. You're not exactly my type, he said timidly while straightening his huge glasses. Well, you're my type and I think you should at least try to like me, I replied. You're making me uncomfortable. Could you please leave? He said. I couldn't believe it. I threw my books into my backpack, got up, walked out the door, and slammed it very loudly. I cried all the way home and I'm sure I looked pretty ridiculous. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I was so angry. After all I had done for that idiot, I will find a way to make him fall for me, I thought. I called Toby. Hey, Thomas really made me sad tonight. I want to get back at him. Will you and the guys help me do something? We can make a lot of money, more than robbing a store. We can kidnap him and ask for a ransom. Anything for you, he said. I explained my plan and he said he'd talk to the guys and get back to me in a while. After a few minutes, he called me back. We're on. They agreed, he said. Great, we'll do it tomorrow. He leaves school around 4 after the robotics club. There's a little alley he walks through that is sort of deserted. We can get him there, I said. The next day I didn't go to school. I spent my day rehearsing my plan. We were going to kidnap Thomas and lock him in a room in Toby's house. Nobody would find out, and my whole crew was upset because they thought he broke my heart. Around 3, I called the guys and they told me it would be better if they handled the kidnapping part alone. They asked me to wait for them at Toby's house, so I did that. I arranged the room where we'd put Thomas. I made sure that the window was locked and that there were a few snacks in the room. I went out to buy a few bottles of water, too. I sat in the room and waited. When it was 4 o'clock, I walked around nervously. At 4:30, no one had come back yet. Did something go wrong? Oh no, I thought. Just then, I heard a loud bang and lots of movement. The door opened and they shoved Thomas inside. What are you doing in here? Toby asked. Nothing, I said. I got up and walked outside. Thomas made eye contact with me, but he was gagged, so he couldn't say anything. You guys are late. What happened? I asked. Well, he was late. And when we finally saw him walking down the alley, he was holding a girl's hand. She looked just like him, short and nerdy too. She had 2 pigtails like a silly child. Gosh, nerds are weird, Toby said. He was walking with a girl? I gasped. He was hiding a whole girlfriend from me. I was angry. You seem jealous, Toby said. Well, of course I am. I'm in love with the guy. I started crying. Patricia? Toby said. What? I replied. You've been so blindly in love with that stupid nerd that you couldn't tell that I've had a crush on you for the longest time? I only agreed to help kidnap Thomas because I thought you wanted to get even with him. I wanted to hurt him because of what he did to you, he said. I froze. I was shocked. Toby? In love with me? Aren't you going to say anything? Did you only ask us to kidnap him so that you could force him to like you? Because I don't think that's how any of this works, he said while looking disappointed because I hadn't said anything. Actually, that's exactly why, I sighed. He left the room and nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen next. He walked back in the room with a bunch of other guys. You involved us in your nonsensical little love story, and now I'm not even sure if we'll get any money from this, one of the leaders said. They grabbed me and pushed me into the room where Thomas was being held captive. What are you doing? I asked. You're going to pay for your stupid behavior, he replied. He left the room and locked the door. So there I was, stuck with Thomas. He was tied and gagged, but my hands were free, so I untied him. I'm sorry, Thomas. For some strange reason, I thought this would have been a good idea, I said. You're completely out of your mind and I hate you. Well, I understand. Who was the girl you were holding hands with this afternoon? My girlfriend. Her name is Olive. Remember when I told you that you weren't my type? Well, she is. She's the total package. I think I'll marry her someday. I was burning with anger and jealousy. Well, you're stuck with me for now. You're not even sure if you'll make it out alive, and you're thinking about marriage? Ugh, I said. The guys left us in that room for 2 days. They'd always throw some water and food inside, so we weren't hungry, but I became extremely miserable. All I did was argue with Thomas, and I was beginning to wonder what I saw in him in the first place. I was sure that my grandma was losing her mind wondering where I was, and Thomas's aunt must have contacted the police by now. I brainstormed all kinds of ideas about how we could escape, but nothing would work. Just as I was about to give up, Gary, one of the gang leaders, opened the door. Listen, the guys have an important message tonight, and we have lots of plans for the week, so it doesn't make sense to keep you here. I'm gonna let you go, but if you tell anyone who we are or what we did to you, I'm gonna hurt you and your families. So make up some story and make it believable. That's a warning, and I'm very serious. Now get lost, he said. We were free! I walked out of that house very quickly and never looked back. I had my crush kidnapped, and it really backfired. I think I ruined my life because I lost the boy I loved, my best friend, and my gang family. I'm not sure how I will recover from this, to be honest. Do you have any advice for me? Please type it in the comments.
Don't worry, guys. You'll fit in fine, our mom said as she dropped us off in front of the school. My younger brother Lucas and I looked at each other with a doubtful look. We waved goodbye. Are you ready? I asked. He nodded, and I draped my arms casually over his shoulder as we walked through the gates of our new school together. Hi, my name is Noah. Don't just watch the video, like it and subscribe to our channel for the best videos. Oh, and don't forget to tap that notification bell. As I sat in my first class, I could not help but notice how clean everything was. Nothing was out of place. All the tables and chairs were perfectly aligned. Even the pencils on the teachers' tables were the same size and in a straight line. I watched as children entered the class, sat quietly, and waited for the teacher. The bell rang and the teacher entered the classroom. She called the roll, introduced me to the class, and proceeded with the day's lesson. For every single question that was asked, all the children raised their hands in an orderly fashion to answer. Children didn't talk to their friends or laugh while the teacher was talking. This happened in every single class. Even walking through the halls and going from class to class, the students made lines and the hallway was quiet. Way too quiet for my liking. I felt as though I was in a horror movie, and at any point in time, something would jump out and snatch me away. I was surprised by two things when I walked into the cafeteria. Number one, that the kids weren't actually talking to each other. And number two, there weren't any cafeteria attendants. Each student was waiting patiently in line and dished out their own portions. I spotted my brother sitting at a table alone. I sat in the chair next to him and pulled out the sandwich that I brought from home. Have you noticed anything freakishly weird about this school? I asked as I bit into my sandwich. Other than how clean and quiet everything is? Yeah, it's pretty weird, replied Lucas. As I observed the other students, I realized that Lucas and I were the only ones eating lunch that we brought from home. The school said that lunches were paid for in the school fee. However, my brother and I walked in with lunch just in case we didn't like the meals that the school offered. The bell rang an hour later. I told Lucas I would meet him in front of the school when the last bell rang. I wished him luck in his classes for the rest of the afternoon, and I headed to class. When we arrived home, my mother was in the kitchen cooking. "Mom, who told you about that school? It's really weird," I said as I sat by the kitchen table. "Oh, you know Mrs. Blackman, the plump woman that I work with. Well, she enrolled her son here earlier this year, and she said she was really impressed by the change in his behavior. And the school has no behavioral problems either, which is a plus. My brother and I weren't badly behaved, but my brother was teased in his last school, so my mother moved us. I just want you boys to have a great experience at school and to be able to learn and explore without the fear of being teased and harassed by other students. And it wouldn't hurt if Lucas learned how to pick up after himself once in a while, or cleaned his room." Now that would be a miracle, I laughed. Even though I missed my old friends, I decided to give the new school a chance for Lucas's sake. I tried to make friends, but I felt as though the conversations were not natural. It felt like speaking to a robot with a memory chip that had pre-answered responses. One thing that amazed me at this school was the fact that the only adults we ever saw were teachers. There were no janitors, groundskeepers, or even cafeteria attendants. I once made a joke about where detention was held in this perfect school, and the student looked at me with a blank expression. The first month, I just went through the phases of going to school, following the rules and doing what was required of me at school. Then, one Friday, I was ill, and I stayed home. I noticed that Lucas left his lunch at home. I called Mom and told her, but she said that Lucas would be okay since he could get lunch at school. I did not trust the lunch from the cafeteria, but my mom just thought I was being dramatic. As soon as Lucas returned from school, I asked him how his day was. He said he had a great day, and he told me how much he enjoyed the lunch at school. While he was talking with me, I watched as he packed away his book bag and his shoes. Lucas had never done this before, when he would usually just drop it anywhere and Mom and I would trip over them. "Are you feeling okay? Since when are you packing away your bag and shoes? Are you feeling okay?" I joked. "I'm fine," Lucas laughed. Suddenly, his facial expression changed. He had a strange look in his eye for a moment, then it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. "I call dibs on the first controller," Lucas shouted as he shoved past me and rushed to the television. Every Friday after school, Lucas and I would play video games till Mom came home. "Hey boys, I'm home." My mother looked around the living room and raised her eyebrows. She walked over and placed her hand on Lucas' forehead and checked his temperature. "Are you okay? I was expecting to trip over your bag and shoes." "I packed them away like I'm supposed to, Mom." There was that look again in Lucas' eyes. Then it was gone. "Can I eat lunch in the cafeteria from now on? It was really good." "Sure, no problem, Lucas. Will you be taking lunch from the cafeteria as well?" Mom looked at me and I shook my head. "No, I'm good. I'll pass." As the weekend lingered on, not once did Lucas clean up after himself. It made me think that I was just overreacting about him packing away his things on Friday. But the following week, my concerns returned as Mom and I noticed little changes about Lucas. He no longer slept in. As soon as he returned home, he began his homework and he no longer wanted to play video games. While my mother was amazed and happy about Lucas' new change, I saw my brother's personality being stripped right before my eyes. The once happy 11-year-old that I was proud to call my brother now appeared robotic and emotionless. It's not that he didn't smile or laugh, but when he did, it seemed hollow and stiff. I knew that it had to do with the food that the cafeteria was serving its students, and if I wanted to save my brother, I had to find out what they were putting in the food and destroy it. Where the food came from and how it got into the cafeteria remained a mystery, especially since there were no cafeteria attendants. The cafeteria doors were kept locked until lunchtime. I assumed that it had an automatic timer on the lock since we never saw anyone unlock the doors, ever. Mom, don't you think it's strange that Lucas' behavior changed once he started eating the food from the cafeteria? Not this again, Noah. Nothing is wrong with the food in the cafeteria. If something was wrong, other parents would have spoken up about it by now. So, do you want pizza or Chinese for dinner? That was another thing that was a mystery to me. I couldn't understand why parents couldn't see the changes in their children's behavior. Is it that good grades and a clean room is all they really want? I knew that I had to figure this out on my own. I decided in the perfect school, I needed to be the black sheep. If I went against the rules, then maybe I would be able to find out more about the school. Not only did I find what I was looking for, but I got way more than I bargained for. The next day, I started with something minor. I placed my legs on my table while the teacher was talking. Then in the next class, I called my cousin and talked with him on the phone the entire class. In science class, I threw the dead frogs on my classmates, and during lunch, I pulled the fire alarm. Even though classes were suspended for the day, not one teacher commented about my behavior. I didn't know what to make of it. I figured since they didn't speak to me about it, for sure they called my mom and spoke to her. I expected my mother to come home and give me a lecture about my behavior at school. But when she walked through the front door, she said nothing. "Hey, Mom," I said casually. "Did the school call you today?" "Noah Nicholas Caesar." My mother placed her hands on her hips. "Did something happen at school that I should know about?" "No," I lied. "It's just that my homeroom teacher said that I may make the honor roll list. I just thought that she called you to confirm it." "Oh, well, that's great. No one from the school called, but I'll let you know if they do." The next day, I decided to take it up a notch. I spray painted the lockers in the hallway. "School sucks." I swore at a teacher, threw over tables and chairs in the classroom, and picked fights with other boys in my class the entire day. By the end of the day, I was disappointed when no teacher noticed my behavior, and I wasn't called to the principal's office. If I was in my old school, I would have been suspended by now. I lay in my bed that night and thought about calling it quits. I wasn't prepared for the bizarre situation that happened the following day. Just like every morning when I got to school, I went to class. I kept thinking that there was nothing else that happened at the school that would surprise me. But today, once again, here I was. When the bell rang, I was still the only person sitting in class. I found it odd and wondered if we were assigned a different classroom today, but I didn't get the memo. I got up and I almost reached the door when I heard a click. The door was locked. I turned the knob frantically and tugged on the door. I heard a soft hissing sound and my eyes and throat began to burn. I coughed hysterically and tried to cover my eyes. I began to feel sleepy. I sank to the floor and blacked out. I opened my eyes groggily and expected to be tied to a chair in a dungeon on some far-off island. But as I looked around, I realized that I was lying on a sofa in what looked like an office. "Nice of you to join me, Mr. Caesar." A slim woman with her black hair and a tight bun and glasses looked at me sternly. "My name is Principal Rothwell. Would you like some water before we begin?" I declined as I sat up slowly. "I've been monitoring your behavior, and it appears that you are seeking an audience. Now, Mr. Caesar, you have an audience. How can I be of assistance? You have my full attention." I took a deep breath. This was my chance to find out the truth about this perfect school. "I know that you're controlling the students by putting some sort of chemical in the food in the cafeteria," I said. "There is no way teenagers will act like that on their own. Don't you have any kind of conscience about what you're doing and the long-term effects this would have on them? I will find out how you're controlling them, even if it's the last thing that I do." I expected her to get upset, angry, or even laugh devilishly, but she kept calm and sat next to me. She spoke softly and calmly. "In my school population, I have parents who are lawyers, senators, doctors, politicians, and psychiatrists. Do you really expect me to take on the ramblings of a 14-year-old? Parents want children who listen, follow instructions, get A's, and don't cause them trouble. I'm giving parents what they want. As long as I have a market, I will never go out of business. Now, you can either go back to class and be well behaved, or I can plant something in your brother's locker that will make him be in juvenile detention for a few years. I have the means and money to get it done. You will not come into my school and disrupt it. Do I make myself clear?" Reluctantly, I nodded. "Good. Now that we have that out of the way, do have a great day, Mr. Caesar." I couldn't allow Principal Rothwell to get away with what she was doing. I just needed to be smart about this. Lucas and the other students deserved to live a life where they were in charge of their own choices and not live like mindless puppets. When my mother got home from work that afternoon, she called Lucas and me and we sat in the living room. "So, I got a call from the school today," Mom said, looking between Lucas and me. I felt my heart rate increase and the palms of my hands became sweaty. Did Principal Rothwell call my mom about what happened today? I cleared my throat. "So, what did the school say?" "Principal Rothwell called." Lucas and I looked nervously at each other. "It looks as though Lucas made the honor roll in his class." Mom gave Lucas a hug and I told him congratulations as I ruffled his hair playfully. I was proud of my brother, but I just wished that he was back to his old self. "This celebration deserves cake," my mom shouted. Lucas went to the kitchen and returned with slices of cake on a plate. The cake was delicious. This is the best cake I have ever had. Where did you get this cake? I asked. I didn't purchase any cake, but you're right, it does taste amazing. I looked at Lucas. Where did you get this cake from? I was almost afraid to hear the answer. Oh, Principal Rothwell gave me the extra cake from the cafeteria today. My heart plummeted.
Before I was born, my dad named me Eva, which means life. See, my mother died in childbirth, and although I was born prematurely, I survived. Since then, my heartbroken father took excellent care of me. The bond we shared was unlike any other. He taught me how to speak, walk, read, ride a bicycle, almost everything. He'd dress up in princess costumes when I decided we should have tea parties with my dolls and teddy bears, and he'd always read me a new story before bedtime. He was the perfect dad, so I didn't really find myself feeling depressed because I didn't have a mother figure in my life. He played both roles really well. Before I continue, please don't forget to like my video and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for being so awesome. I felt comfortable telling my dad anything. When I got older and started having crushes, I'd tell him everything too. He wasn't overprotective and never threatened to shoot any of the boys that I went out with. He'd just fill their heads with awful dad jokes. Maybe threatening them would have been better, honestly. I couldn't have asked for a better life. I lived in the perfect small neighborhood. Everyone there was kind, and my best friends all lived on the same street. My school was the best too. But I guess when everything seems to be going right, it's a warning that something is about to go wrong. And that is what happened to me. When I was 17, my dad told me that he had started dating again. Although I was worried, I wanted him to be happy, so I accepted and wished him the best. Sometimes he'd bring the women he was dating to meet me. Some of them were really nice, and they always tried to win my affection by buying me gifts or taking me shopping. But my dad never dated one woman for more than 3 months. It's like these women would appear, then disappear from my life. So I learned never to get too attached. I appreciated the free stuff, though. This is why nothing could have prepared me for what my father would tell me one night. Eva, I met the perfect woman. We're going to get married next month, he said. What? Was the only word I could manage to utter. I met her online. She lives in Montana. We are moving there next week to live with her and her family. Don't worry. She has a really big house, so you'll be comfortable, he said. I instantly burst into tears. Dad, we're in Michigan. Montana is miles away. I love my life here. I love my school, my friends, this house. How could you do this to me so suddenly? I said between tears. I know that this is going to be difficult at first, but maybe it will be even better over there. Also, you'll have a mother figure. Wouldn't that be great? As a man, there's only so much I can do for you. Plus, we can always come back to visit. We'll still have this house. I won't sell it, don't worry, he said. I tried to remain optimistic and to believe him. By the next week, we were all packed and ready to leave. As we got into the car to drive to the airport, my heart broke. Mostly because we had to leave my kitten Georgie behind. My best friend promised to take care of him, but I was still very sad. We couldn't take him because my dad said that Lily didn't like cats. When we got to Montana, we met my future stepmom at the airport. She was holding up a sign which said, "Welcome, Philip and Eva." My dad gave her a hug, and she looked at me and said, "Wow, Eva, you're so beautiful. I've heard so much about you. It's nice to meet you." She didn't seem bad at all, and she was really beautiful too. We drove to my new home, which was actually pretty huge. I was taken up to my room, which was decorated exactly how I liked it. I had a lot of cool new stuff in there as well, even a new prayer book with a huge monitor. My eyes twinkled. After I unpacked, Lily called me downstairs to meet my new siblings. She had 4 children. Arthur and James were 6 and 7. Then there was Maria, who was the same age as me. Finally, there was Janet, who was 19. She planned to move away for college soon. We had an interesting evening getting to know each other. 1 week later, the wedding ceremony was held at a local church. Although I felt this was happening all too quickly, my dad looked happy, so I tried to be happy for him. We all went back home together as one big, happy family. I now officially had a stepfamily. The first few months, Lily was exceptionally nice to me. She paid more attention to me than she paid to her own children. She would sometimes bring me breakfast in bed, take me to the spa or to the nail salon to get my nails done. We'd go shopping or bake cookies together, and we were always laughing at some silly random jokes. I felt like I had a real mother, as she was so kind and nurturing. My new siblings were also adorable. They were always laughing and smiling, and they made me feel right at home. Everything was perfect. My dad and I still had a wonderful relationship. I told him about everything that happened at my new school, and we still hung out a lot. But one day, he referred to me as the most beautiful girl in the whole world, and I could have sworn that I saw Lily look very angry. After he made that comment, I noticed her attitude towards me changed. We stopped going out together, and she was always too busy to do anything fun. When I tried to talk to her, she'd just give me one-word answers like, okay, and cool. Then she'd look away and pretend to be doing something else. I realized there was a big problem when I overheard her talking to my dad in their room one night. "You called Eva the most beautiful girl in the world. Don't you think I'm beautiful too?" she asked. "Of course you are, but a daughter will always be number one in her father's eyes. Don't you feel the same way about your sons?" he asked. "Oh, I can't believe you. A wife is supposed to be a man's first priority," she said, and then they both went silent. The next day, she did something awful. She was mopping the floor and forgot that she left a puddle just underneath the stairs. When my father came down the stairs, he tripped and fell. His ankle was so badly damaged that we had to take him to the hospital. "This is all because Eva emptied a bottle of water at the bottom of the stairs," my stepmom said to my dad in front of me. "What? You left the puddle while you were mopping. Do you really think I'd intentionally try to hurt my dad?" I screamed. "See? She's doing things and blaming me now. Your daughter's really getting out of hand," Lily said. "Eva, don't disrespect your stepmother like that. She's very nice to you," my dad replied. "But Dad!" I tried to explain that she was framing me, but he wouldn't listen. When we got back home, my room was in a total mess. My clothes were on the floor, my stationery was on my light pink carpet, and there were stains everywhere because the markers were open. My lamp was broken, there were no sheets on my bed, and my mattress was ripped. I wanted to cry. "Dad, look what someone did to my room," I said. He came to my room slowly as he couldn't walk very well from the fall. "What happened here?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. Suddenly, my stepmom appeared behind him and said, "Would you look at that? Now she's lost her mind and trashed her own room. I spent a lot of time, money, and effort making this room nice for you, and this is what you've done?" she screamed. "What the hell are you talking about? Dad, she's lying. You know I'd never do this," I cried. "Eva, apologize to your stepmother," my dad said while sighing and leaving the room. While his head was turned, my stepmother grinned at me with the most evil look I had ever seen. I had to clean up everything on my own, and it was hard to do that while crying. Why had she become so evil all of a sudden? Later, I found out that she paid my little stepbrothers to trash the room. Lily continued doing awful things and blaming me so that Dad would see me differently. She even turned her own children against me. No one would talk to me, and when my dad talked to me, he always seemed disappointed. One day, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. I got the idea to set up hidden cameras in the house so that I could prove to my dad that his new, awful wife was the one causing all the trouble. I put one in every room in the house, including mine. That same night, my dad complained that his laptop stopped working. It was pretty important because he needed it for work. I went to my room and checked the surveillance footage and saw a video of my stepmother throwing the laptop on the floor. I saved this video but decided not to show it to my dad until I had more evidence. Within the next week, I had footage of her staining the furniture, burning the food, putting laxatives in his ice cream, pouring a sticky substance all over his favorite sneakers, and breaking several things in the kitchen. Of course, she blamed me for all these things, and when she spoke negatively in front of my father about me, I just smiled and said, "Sorry." She probably began to wonder what was going on with me. After I had gathered enough evidence, I typed and printed beautiful invitations, inviting the whole family to a family meeting. Everyone was seated nicely in the living room. I got my laptop and projector and pointed it towards a white wall. What you guys are about to witness may come as a surprise. Kids, your mom is a monster. Dad, what have you married? You've made a mistake, and the sooner we can get out of here, the better. Quite frankly, I am tired of being blamed for things I haven't done. Lily, why do you dislike me? Is it because I'm prettier than you and more important to my dad than you'll ever be? I said. I played the first video of Lily smashing my dad's laptop. No one really looked surprised. They just looked serious. I played the rest of the videos. Lily's daughters walked out disgusted, but the boys remained because they were already used to doing their mother's dirty work. At the end of it all, I said, "Dad, do you believe me now? I've done none of the things she's accused me of. She has made my life a living hell. Can we please go home? I miss my life," I said. My father stared at me. I thought he was going to apologize, but instead he said, "Eva, you violated your stepmother's privacy. Apologize immediately." My jaw dropped to the ground. Was he out of his mind? I've told you she's no good. It's about time we sent her off to boarding school. I know a good one in Switzerland. We can send her there and we won't have to worry about her doing horrible things anymore. Lily said, "Yes, dear, that's a really good idea." My dad said, "Did you not understand a thing I just showed you?" I screamed. "There she goes, screaming again. The girl is out of control," Lily said. The next week, I was all packed and sent off to Switzerland. I am there now, and school isn't as bad as being around that horrible woman, but I really miss how perfect my life was before my dad married her. I often wonder what happened to my dad, and why he never took my side when I was all he had for 17 years. There are some things we may never understand in life, I guess.